Chapter 1669. Gong Sun Fei was at least twice the weight of an adult man, yet she had been lifted up by Shui Ling by the collar, so it was easy to imagine how angry Shui Ling was at this time. Gong Sun Fei, on the other hand, had her collar clasped and she was unable to breathe. If it weren't for Hu Ling who was following closely behind, Gong Sun Fei might have already been sent to see King Yama. The change just now happened in an instant and no one could react in time. Xiao Su angrily reprimanded, "Water Spirit, where are your manners?" He could understand Water Spirit's anxious feelings, but this was the Moon Clan. Gong Sun Shui and the others were still here, so they could not overstep their boundaries. Otherwise, if the other side wanted to pursue this matter, it would not be without reason. So, he was a step ahead of everyone else and reprimanded Water Spirit, but it was also to protect her. Water Spirit took back her hand. She was anxious and angry, with tears in her eyes. She knelt in front of her master with tears flowing down her face. "Master, we've searched the entire palace, but we haven't found Wind Spirit's whereabouts. What should we do?" Hu Ling quickly followed up, "That's right, we've already dug 3 feet into the ground, but we still haven't found Wind Spirit. Could it be that Wind Spirit isn't here?" Everyone couldn't help but frown as they looked at Gong Sun Fei. Xiao Su's eyes flashed with hostility. "Where is he?" Gong Sun Fei was currently coughing with great effort. That woman looked delicate and weak, but she never thought that she would be so strong, almost strangling her to death. Hearing Xiao Su's sudden shout, she shivered in fright. Although her eyes wandered around the handsome men just now, she didn't dare to look at Xiao Su for too long. Although he was wearing a mask, from her many years of experience, she knew that this person was not to be trifled with. Just a glance just now, this person was emitting a murderous aura all over his body, and she was instantly terrified. But what she disliked the most was being threatened by others. They thought that with Wind Spirit in her hands, these people would not dare do anything to her. So, she raised her chin and arrogantly looked down on everyone. "Didn't I just say it? Other than me, no one can find Shui Feng. You still don't believe me? He, quickly release me, kneel in front of me and kowtow 3 times. Say that you will never dare to offend me again and leave all the beautiful men to serve me. Then I will consider letting you see him." Shameless. Water Spirit gave him a tight slap. It was a pity that this person's flesh was too thick. His palms hurt from the beating. Gong Sun Fei was slapped in the face. She was afraid of pain the most. At this time, she cried out, "You bitch, you actually dare to hit me. Let me tell you, don't even think about knowing his whereabouts." Water Spirit pulled out the sword at Hu Ling's waist and pointed it at her neck. "Do you believe that I won't kill you right now?" Gong Sun Fei couldn't help but shrink back a little, but she quickly stretched her neck and shouted, "If I die, he won't be able to live either. Think about it carefully." The fat on Gong Sun Fei's face jiggled as she smiled triumphantly. Her fat and greasy appearance, coupled with her attitude, made everyone present feel disgusted. Water Spirit's hand trembled and hesitation appeared on her face. Gong Sun Fei was right, she couldn't kill her right now. At this time, Xiao Su stood up and walked in front of Gong Sun Fei. His black eyes were filled with cold killing intent. "You're mistaken. If anything happens to Feng Ling, you won't live either." As soon as he said this, Xiao Yao and the others immediately felt the temperature in the room drop. Xiao Yao couldn't help but rub his arms. It seemed that his royal brother was angry. Once his royal brother was angry, someone would suffer. Gong Sun Fei was scared out of her wits by Xiao Su's aura. However, she was thick and wasn't afraid of the cold. At this time, her intelligence was online and she knew that Feng Ling was her only bargaining chip. As long as she used Feng Ling to negotiate, she would be able to protect herself in the end, so she couldn't give it up so easily. Thus, Gong Sun Fei trembled and said, You think you'll scare me by threatening me like this? Let me tell you, if you let me go, guarantee my safety, and let them serve me. If you agree to all my conditions, I'll be merciful and tell you his whereabouts. Otherwise, don't even think about it." Perhaps no one would have thought that the reason why Gongsun Fei had the courage to go against Xiao Su was because of her obsession with beauty. All the men present were of the highest quality. She had lived for so many years, but none of the male attendants she had snatched were so outstanding. Thus, it proved that saying, "If you die under a peony, you'll still be a romantic ghost." Xiao Yao and the others couldn't help but have goosebumps when they saw Gongsun Fei's perverted look. For a woman to be able to live to this extent, it could be considered a miracle in the world. How could Xiao Su agree to her conditions? Just as he was about to pry the whereabouts out of her mouth, he heard Gongsun Shue's voice. "Don't worry about her identity. So you can't hold on any longer. The Yu clan will be defeated sooner or later. When that time comes, she'll be nothing. Don't worry about it, it'll be difficult to explain to the Yu clan. So, you can interrogate her however you want. I'll pretend I don't know anything." Gongsun Fei was stunned by Gongsun Shue's cold voice. She glared at Gongsun Shue and said, "How can you treat me like this? Our matters should be settled behind closed doors. How can you let an outsider humiliate me? The ancestors of the Gongsun clan are watching. Aren't you afraid of being cursed when you see them in the future?" Xiao Yao couldn't help but retort, "You vicious fat woman, when you killed my father, did you ever think about your ancestors? The ones who should be struck by lightning the most should be you, the scourge. Perhaps when your ancestors see your end, they'll clap their hands and cheer." Gongsun Fei was so angry that she couldn't say a word. Gongsun Shue looked at Xiao Yao who was angrily speaking up for her, and felt a surge of warmth in her heart. "Speak, where is Feng Ling?" Water Spirit put the sword against her neck and said hatefully. Gongsun Fei looked at the sword against her neck and suddenly leaned forward, ready to bump into it. Water Spirit was so scared that she immediately pulled back her hand. Not being able to touch the sword, Gongsun Fei smacked her lips regretfully and looked at Water Spirit provocatively. "I knew you wouldn't dare to do anything to me. I'll leave my words here. Unless I'm in a good mood, don't even think about getting any information from me." Everyone saw the thrilling scene just now. They didn't expect Gongsun Fei to be so stubborn. She was so stubborn that they were in a dilemma. They couldn't kill her, and they couldn't get any information from her. What should they do? Just when everyone was at their wits' end, someone came in and reported, "Master, the young master and the two elders are here." Xiao Su frowned slightly when he heard this. What were they doing here at this time? Just when he was about to send them back, he heard the subordinate say, "The young master said that he came here on the young princess's orders." Ian? Xiao Su was a little confused, but he still let them in. Not long after, two adults and one child swaggered in holding hands. Before Xiao Su could speak, Xiao Kong ran over and hugged his leg. He looked up and said with a grin, "Mother knows that you didn't find Feng Ling crispy, so she asked Bao Bao to send Daddy a helper." Chapter 1670. Helpers? Everyone looked at the two old masters in confusion. Could it be that the Grand Emperor and Old Master Chu could help find Feng Ling? But even the Shaolai cavalry could not find him. Could they be of help? Seeing that everyone was looking at great-grandfather and grandfather, Xiao Ankang immediately patted his father's arm and shook his head. "It's not them, it's not them." Then who was it? "Could it be you, little one?" Everyone felt that it was a little funny, but they could not laugh in this situation. Xiao Su knew that the little fellow would not joke about serious matters. He carried his son and asked patiently, "Then who was your mother talking about?" Xiao Ankang showed a rare look of disdain towards his father. "There, it's them." Didn't he see the three big helpers? Everyone looked in the direction that Xiao Ankang was pointing and saw Bai Yutang, Snowflake Cake and Glutinous Rice Ball scratching their heads and licking their fur uneasily. They could not help but twitch their mouths and show their disappointment. It was still acceptable to fight, but how could Bai Yutang and the rest be of help in this matter? Little Princess Consort was not joking, right? Feeling that everyone was looking down on them, Bai Yutang and the rest arrogantly raised their chins. If Master did not ask them to come over, they would not be willing to do such a thing. This was really infuriating. "Ah, where's this fat pig? I really want to take a bite." Thus, Bai Yutang and the rest were attracted to Gongsun Fei. They went forward and sniffed. "Achoo, this fragrance is so pungent. Should we throw her into the lake to wash and eat her?" Just as these three eyes were glowing with green discs and thinking about how to chop her into pieces, Gongsun Fei was frightened by the three big fellows who suddenly approached her. Finally, when she saw the three shining fangs, her eyes rolled back and she fainted. "Tsk, so timid." The three of them also rolled their eyes. Everyone felt that the three of them were too intelligent. Every move they made could tell what they were thinking. Xiao Su retracted his gaze and asked his son, "What did your mother say?" Shaoan Kong immediately sat up straight, recalling his mother's instructions. He said word for word, "Mother said that the snow wolf's nose is very sensitive, and can use its sense of smell to find its prey, so as long as Bai Yutang and the others ask about the things that Feng Ling Su touched, they can use the smell to find him." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone suddenly realized that this was indeed a good idea. A smile appeared on Xiao Su's face. As expected of the little guy, he was always able to find a way out of a hopeless situation. "But do we have anything related to wine spirits?" Xiao Yao asked. Water Spirit's eyes lit up. "Yes." She immediately took out a handkerchief from her sleeve. She had taken it from Feng Ling's room as a souvenir after he left that year. She had never left it in the past 10 years. She never thought that it would come in handy today. "Let them smell it," the retired emperor said to Water Spirit. Water Spirit nodded heavily, squatted down, and handed the handkerchief to the three of them. Bai Yutang and the others were a little unwilling. They were the dignified kings of the Snow Mountain. It was fine if they were dyed black dogs, but today they were reduced to being dogs. They were truly angered. But thinking of their master's instructions before he left, they still went over and sniffed the handkerchief. The three of them looked at each other, and without another word, they rushed out like the wind. They split up and sniffed the corridor, then sniffed the garden. Not long later, the three of them stopped and looked in the same direction. Everyone had already followed them out. At this time, they saw them running wildly in one direction. It could be seen that they already had a direction, so everyone immediately followed. Water Spirit and Huoling followed in front. When they saw that the three of them were heading to the backyard that they had searched no less than 3 times, they were a little surprised. Bai Yutang and the others did not look at those luxurious houses, but ran more and more remote until they stopped at a tightly shut small dilapidated house. If this place was considered a harem, then this place could be considered a cold palace. Not only was it geographically remote, it was also overgrown with weeds, and it looked like there was no one around. "We just searched this place twice, but we didn't find anything," Huoling said in confusion, but at this time, the three of them were already scratching the door. Seeing this, he immediately went forward to push open the courtyard door. As soon as the door opened, the three of them shot out like arrows. However, they soon slowed down and began to sniff around, calling out incessantly. Water Spirit had been watching their actions the entire time. Seeing them like this, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. What's wrong with them? Ji Linyang, who was standing beside her, rubbed his chin and thought for a bit. If this one didn't guess wrong, they smelled a strong scent here, but because the scent is too strong, they can't tell where the person is right now, so they are trying to determine the location. When these words were said, Water Spirit's eyes lit up. Her hands were tightly clenched together, praying that the three of them could quickly determine Feng Ling's location. Then she would be able to find him. Bai Yutang walked to the side of the pond and suddenly turned around to howl at Xiao Su. Wolf language online translation, here. Xiao Yao and the others were stunned. This was a pond, how could they hide someone? Was this Bai Yutang's information wrong? However, when Xiao Su walked over with his son and looked at the surface of the pond, he suddenly remembered that when they first entered North Korea, the entrance was also at the bottom of the pond. He narrowed his eyes. At this time, Ji Linyang seemed to have also thought of this. They looked at each other and nodded slightly. Drain this pond. When Xiao Su finished speaking, Xiao Lai Qi immediately stepped forward and scooped up bucket after bucket of water. Because it hadn't rained this winter, there wasn't much water in the pond. Soon, the mud at the bottom of the pond was exposed. Someone jumped down and pushed the mud away. When he felt the rock below, he exclaimed, "Master, there's a door below. Move it away." Xiao Lai Qi didn't say anything else and worked together to move the 1,000-pound rock away, revealing the entrance inside. Bai Yutong and the other two were the first to jump in. Water Spirit followed closely behind, and everyone else also stepped in. Inside, there were stone walls and stone steps. A cold air came out from below, and everyone couldn't help but shiver. These 2 days, Feng Ling felt that his body was about to reach its limit. He couldn't hold on any longer. He thought sorrowfully that seeing her and Master again in this life was already an extravagant hope. It seemed that he had to leave first and wait for them on the road to the Yellow Springs. He didn't know if he could discuss with Mengpa to drink her soup later and let him guard the Bridge of Helplessness until he saw Water Spirit again before reincarnating. Because he had drunk Meng Po's soup and crossed the Bridge of Helplessness, he had forgotten everything and cut off all ties with his previous life. He was afraid that everything would be erased. He and her would just be a dream left behind on the river of forgetfulness. As he thought dizzily, he seemed to feel something licking his face and his hands. He thought, could it be that woman who released the dog to eat him? He didn't expect that in the end, he would fall to the point where there wasn't even a corpse left. At this time, a series of footsteps sounded by his ear, as if stepping on his heart. Feng Ling, I'm coming, a heart-wrenching cry pierced his eardrums and directly hit his heart. His heart skipped a beat. You're coming. Is it you? My Water Spirit? Chapter 1671. As soon as Water Spirit entered the dark little house, she smelled the scent of blood. Her heart tightened, and when she turned the corner and saw the person lying on the bed, she forgot to breathe for a moment. Borrowing the faint light from the stone door, she saw the appearance of the person lying on the bed. His face was weak and thin, but even if he turned into ashes, she would still recognize him. She stumbled over and wanted to reach out and hug him, but she saw that his clothes were stained with blood. She didn't know where he was injured and her arms were frozen in the air. Finally, she slowly lowered her hands and touched his face. Feng Ling, are you asleep? Open your eyes and look at me. She softly said, overjoyed. But when she saw his pale face, her voice was close to begging, fear, and sadness. Feng Ling, who had already stepped into the gates of hell, heard someone calling out to him in the distant void. The voice was so familiar, just like the time when she clamored for him to accompany her to buy rice cakes on the street. However, there was a bit more anxiety, fear, and panic in this voice. He looked at the gate where the ghosts were floating and resolutely withdrew his foot. He turned around and quickly walked back the way he came. After staying here for so long, he already didn't know what warmth felt like. At this time, there were warm water droplets falling on his face and sliding down his neck, as if injecting a trace of strength. Feng Ling slowly opened his eyes, but unfortunately, it was still dark in front of him. But what was worth being happy about was that he could clearly feel someone holding his face and saying something in his ear. When he recovered, he heard what the person beside the bed was saying. Feng Ling, I'm Water Spirit. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were brought here and let you suffer so much. I'm sorry, I should have come to find you earlier. Feng Ling, don't sleep. Master and I have come to find you. Quickly wake up and look at me, Feng Ling. The voice was mournful, filled with endless sadness and longing. I didn't expect that after not seeing you for so many years, you're still so good at crying. Water Spirit cried and cried. Suddenly, she seemed to hear someone teasing her. Her eyes were filled with tears, and there were tears on her eyelashes. Her vision was blurry. She blinked hard, trying to see the person in front of her clearly. At this moment, her cheeks were covered by a cold hand. I'm fine. Don't cry. She wanted to nod her head, but when she heard his hoarse voice, her tears welled up again. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't say a word. Seeing him like this, she regretted that she was late. Feng Ling felt the warmth on his fingertips and felt even more uncomfortable. His entire body was in pain, but he had long become numb to the pain. However, when he heard the cries of his sweetheart, his heart began to ache. He suppressed the metallic taste in his throat and diverted her attention. "How do you know I'm still alive?" "I came to Chao Ming with my master to handle some matters, and coincidentally found your wind chimes. I followed this clue and found out that you were here." As she spoke, she quickly took out the string of wind chimes from her bosom. The wind chimes let out a crisp sound as she moved, echoing in the empty room for a long time. When Feng Ling heard the sound, he couldn't help but look towards the source of the sound. He had lost it when he was escaping. He thought that he would never hear its crisp sound again, but he didn't expect that it would bring the woman he loved back to him. He couldn't help but reach out to touch the wind chimes, but his hands swayed in the air, brushing past the wind chimes. Even the currently emotional water spirit noticed that something was wrong with him. The wind chimes were right in front of him, and there was light in the room. How could he not touch them? Suddenly, she had a bad guess and immediately looked into his eyes. That pair of bright and clear eyes were always sharp and carried a faint light. Although it was still that pair of eyes, they had lost their luster and were unfocused. Water Spirit's lips trembled. She raised her hand to touch his eyes, but she didn't see any reaction from him. Tears came out of her eyes and she said in a hoarse voice, "Your eyes." He didn't expect that she would still find out. It was their first time meeting and he didn't want to scare her, but he wanted to smile and tell her that he was fine, but his chest hurt. He couldn't suppress it and he felt something flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Feng Ling, don't scare me." Shui Ling stretched out her hand and hugged him tightly, watching the blood spurt out from his mouth, her already pale face becoming even paler. Her body was covered in scars, not a single part of her body left unscathed. The strength she had been suppressing finally collapsed at this moment. How could this be? He was clearly a cute and loving person in her heart. How could he become like this? Even when she was angry with him in the past and wanted to hit him, she had never really hit him hard. Now that she saw him lying there with only half his life left, she felt that the whole sky had collapsed. How could the person she cared about so much, the person she couldn't bear to say harsh words to, become like this? Xiao Su and the others were waiting outside the stone room, listening to the two's conversation. They wanted to give the couple some time to reunite after a long time, but they didn't expect to hear Water Spirit's mournful cries. Everyone's expressions changed and they immediately rushed in. They saw Water Spirit hugging Feng Ling who was on the verge of death. She turned her head and begged Xiao Su, "Master, please save Feng Ling. If Feng Ling dies, this subordinate won't live alone either." Huo Ling looked at Feng Ling who was covered in wounds, his eyes closed, and didn't have a trace of life left, causing him to stagger. Hearing Shui Ling's words, Huo Ling's eyes immediately turned red as he angrily shouted, "What nonsense are you spouting? Master will definitely save Feng Ling." Xiao Su saw the once handsome subordinate lying there in a sorry state covered in blood. His throat seemed to be choked and his eyes turned red. Ethereal had already squeezed in front of them. Without waiting for his master's orders, he immediately reached out and carefully placed his hand on Feng Ling's wrist. That hand full of wounds made him, a person who had practiced medicine for many years, tremble uncontrollably. He couldn't find a single part that was uninjured to take his pulse. Water Spirit looked closely at Ethereal, her bright eyes filled with hope. Ethereal's eyes stared blankly, then he said loudly, "Quick, move Feng Ling away from here. The cold air has entered his body and his life is in danger." Water Spirit was stunned and couldn't speak. She subconsciously wanted to carry Feng Ling, but she didn't know where to start. He was covered in wounds and she was afraid that he would be in pain. Ethereal saw that she was already out of her wits and couldn't care about anything else. He pulled Water Spirit away and bent down to carry Feng Ling. He quickly said, "Water Spirit, quickly get someone to get hot water and prepare scissors. Ethereal's movements were very fast, as if there was wind under his feet. Everyone made way for him. Because at this moment, everyone knew that Feng Ling was probably already. Water Spirit looked at her empty arms and her gaze landed on the remaining bloodstains on her hands. The glaring red instantly woke her up and she hurriedly chased after them. Everyone looked at the three people's departing figures and immediately followed after them. Xiao Su stood in the stone room and his gaze swept over the simple room inch by inch. His eyes were scarlet, as if a storm was brewing. After he finished looking, he retracted his gaze. There was no more red in his eyes, only a bone-chilling cold was left. He then walked out with large strides. Chapter 1672. Because Feng Ling's life was hanging by a thread, Ethereal chose a random room to treat him as soon as they exited the secret passage. This time, Feng Ling's injuries were different from the ones that Ethereal had treated before. In addition, he was his own brother, so he was very sad. He was also afraid that his master would be sad to see Feng Ling in this state, so he sent everyone out. However, Shui Ling couldn't be driven away. Kong Ling originally didn't want her to stay, he didn't want her to suffer a heavier blow, but when it came to Feng Ling, Shui Ling's stubbornness made him unable to bear it, so he allowed her to stay and help. When they exited the stone room, he had already given Feng Ling a few 9 revolutions life-prolonging pills to save his life. However, it wasn't too early to celebrate, because Feng Ling's breathing had begun to weaken again. He opened the medicine box and took out silver needles. He applied them to Feng Ling's major acupoints to temporarily keep him alive. Then, he quickly wrote down a prescription and asked the servants to buy it for torment. Water Spirit, help me. Take off Feng Ling's clothes. Ethereal had no choice. He had to protect Feng Ling's heart and veins, so he couldn't do this. Moreover, the people who came with him were all men. They couldn't do such delicate work because Feng Ling's injuries were too serious. He didn't dare to use the hands of the people in Gongsun Fei's residence. Water Spirit didn't say anything and went forward with hot water. She prepared to take off Feng Ling's clothes. However, she didn't know when the injuries were caused. His flesh and blood were already sticking to his clothes. She finally understood why Ethereal had asked people to prepare scissors. Ethereal wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He glanced at Water Spirit, whose face was full of tears. She was gritting her teeth and cutting off Feng Ling's clothes with trembling hands. He couldn't bear to watch anymore and turned away. Why was it so difficult for the fierce cavalry? They loved to part, but couldn't ask for it. At this time, the door was pushed open. Qing Yanluo rushed in with a medicine box. Ethereal's eyes lit up. Why are you here? Qing Yan knows about the situation here and asked me to come and help. What's the situation now? Qing Yanluo hurried over to him and asked anxiously as she put down the medicine box. At this time, her gaze fell on the handsome man on the couch. Seeing the defeated look on his face, her eyes widened. Ethereal whispered in her ear, "Little Yen, his condition is worse than Pang Zhijing's. This time, we have to race against time." Qing Yanluo already had an idea when she saw Feng Ling's complexion. When she heard his pleading voice, she couldn't help but hold his hand. "I'll do my best." She knew that this was his close friend, his brother. If he couldn't save him, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Although Ethereal deliberately lowered his voice so that she wouldn't hear, Water Spirit still heard it. She had just cut open Feng Ling's clothes. The scars on his skin told her how much he had suffered before this. Her heart was in so much pain that she couldn't breathe. When she heard Ethereal's words, she fell to her knees with a thud. "Ethereal, Yanluo, I beg you. No matter what, you have to save his life. We've been separated for 10 years and we haven't even spoken 10 sentences today. I can't let him go just like that." Water Spirit kowtowed to the ground, her hands clasped tightly to the ground. Her tears wet the green tiles in front of her. Ethereal's eyes were wet. They had all grown up together. Who didn't know each other's personalities? Water Spirit was a stubborn person who didn't bow down easily. Only Feng Ling could make her behave like a young girl of her age. Now, for Feng Ling, she had cast aside her dignity and knelt down again and again. How could her older brothers not feel sad and sympathetic? Qing Yanluo didn't dare to accept such a big gesture. She immediately went forward to help her up. Her heart ached and she said sadly, "Water Spirit, don't worry. We'll do our best." When Shui Ling heard her say that she would go all out, her heart sank. Even these two divine doctors couldn't guarantee that Feng Ling would be able to survive. She couldn't help but look at the person on the bed. Her whole body trembled. The first thing to do now was to stop the bleeding and clean the wounds to prevent them from worsening. When Qing Yanluo helped to apply medicine and saw the new and old wounds, she couldn't help but curse, "You're inhumane." Ethereal glanced at Water Spirit, who was quietly wiping Feng Ling's body. She touched Xiaoyan's hand and shook her head. Qing Yanluo knew that her words would only make Water Spirit feel worse, so she immediately shut her mouth. After bandaging the wounds, Qing Yanluo took a bit of Feng Ling's blood for identification. Ethereal burned the dagger until it was bright red. Then, she removed the iron lock on Feng Ling's shoulder blade. This scene would make anyone who heard it cry. The inner room was so busy that their feet didn't even touch the ground. In the courtyard, the atmosphere was so tense that it could drip water. A person who looked like a steward knelt in front of everyone, trembling. This person was the steward of Gongsun Fei's residence. He was also an old man who followed Su Yu. Gongsun Shui's men had captured him when Xiao Su and the others entered the underground tunnel. He was also the only other person besides Gongsun Fei who knew about Feng Ling's situation. "Repeat what you said to me just now. If you miss anything, it won't be as simple as bringing disaster to your entire family," Gongsun Shui said calmly. Her tone was filled with a strong murderous intent. This steward, whose surname was Su, didn't dare to resist. He prostrated himself on the ground and repeated what he had just said. "That young master was brought back by an aide sent out by my master 10 years ago. At that time, the aide brought assassins to eliminate Murong Yunxian. However, he didn't expect that Murong Yunxian would disappear after entering another country. After searching for him for a long time, he was about to return when he encountered a fierce battle. At that time, the young master was the one who led the troops. The aide said that he didn't expect to meet such a brave, intelligent, and talented martial artist. He thought that the young master had died in the battle and wanted to find a place to bury him out of pity. He didn't expect that he was still alive, so he rescued him and brought him back to the Yu clan. At that time, our master wanted to control the Yu clan, but he didn't have many capable subordinates. Coincidentally, the aide brought the young master back. Our master treated the young master with respect and was very friendly to him. After talking with him, he discovered that he was a talented general and wanted to keep him. However, the young master said that once he recovered from his injuries, he wanted to go back. How could our master agree? However, the young master insisted, so our master came up with a plan to have the young master train a group of death warriors for him. As long as they were trained well, our master would send the young master back. The young master agreed. After training him for half a year, he happened to discover that our master was lying to him. Furthermore, our master put a slow-acting poison in his food in order to control him. The young master didn't want to be used, so he planned to escape. The first time, he escaped from his room and was caught. The second time, he was discovered by the guards and was caught. The third time, he escaped the furthest. However, our master sent 300 soldiers to chase him. He killed nearly half of them before he was defeated because of his lack of strength. The young master escaped 3 times. If he hadn't been poisoned, he would have escaped long ago. Chapter 1673. Master doesn't like disobedient people, so after the third time, he imprisoned him and forced him to work for him. Unfortunately, that young master is a stubborn person. No matter what kind of torture he suffered, he didn't lower his head. So, he poisoned, whipped, and used all kinds of methods. When housekeeper Su said this, he clearly felt the temperature around him turn cold. The person who was emitting the cold air was sitting in front of him, but he didn't dare to raise his head. He was afraid that if he did, he would lose his life. Everyone also felt the cold air coming from Xiao Su's body. They, as outsiders, couldn't bear the torture that Feng Ling suffered day after day, year after year, let alone Xiao Su who had watched them grow up. Everyone on Shaolai cavalry went through wind and rain with him. Although they weren't brothers, they were better than brothers. How could it not hurt to be hit in the palm and the back of the hand? Xiao Su gripped the armrest tightly, crushing the 100-year-old wood without even realizing it. Continue. Housekeeper Su was scared out of his wits, and he immediately continued to speak while trembling. Because Feng Ling wasn't willing to work for Su Yu, he was tortured in the Su family for nearly 10 years. Su Yu wanted to accept this talent at first, but in the end, he wasn't willing to submit. Su Yu gradually lost the thought he had in the past and wanted to break his pride. Because Su Yu was a proud person, he didn't allow anyone to challenge his authority. Until a few months ago, when Gong Sun Fei saw Feng Ling by chance and was shocked. She asked Su Yu for him. Su Yu was full of hatred for Feng Ling. He thought that if he was willing to help him, he would already be sitting in the highest position in the Yu family. So, he agreed to his niece, wanting to use her hands to humiliate him. Who told him to be neither soft nor hard? Then let him have a taste of being humiliated by a woman. However, Gong Sun Fei also suffered a lot at Feng Ling's hands. She couldn't get close to him, so she became angry and locked him up. She wanted to break his spirit, but the situation suddenly became tense. She didn't have the time to care about Feng Ling, so Feng Ling was able to keep his life until reinforcements came. If one were to use a sentence to describe Feng Ling's 10 years, it was like walking through hell again and again. After nearly 10 years of torture, if not for his strong will, who could endure it? If it weren't for the hope and obsession in his heart, he wouldn't have been able to hold on. After Butler Su finished speaking, the room fell silent. However, this kind of silence made one's heart turn cold. Gong Sun Shui sighed softly in her heart. Su Yu and the others had done a lot of harm. First, they had destroyed the Murong family, and now they had imprisoned such a talented young man for 10 years. Their crimes were too numerous to count. She looked at Xiao Su and said seriously, "I will give you justice for what the Su family has done to young Master Feng Ling." Xiao Yao immediately said, "This was all done by those evil people. What does it have to do with you? Besides, you're a victim, aren't you?" Gong Sunshua shook her head. After all, this happened in the Moon Clan. As the clan leader, I can't escape responsibility. Xiao Yao was just about to say something when his brother spoke up. Clan leader Gong Sun, second brother is right. This has nothing to do with you. I'm not the kind of person who can't tell right from wrong. I won't let any of these people who have harmed Feng Ling live. Now, I only hope that clan leader Gong Sun can promise me one thing. Xiao Su looked at Gong Sun Shui and said. What is it? Gong Sun Shui didn't know what he wanted to do. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes, which were full of murderous intent. When the dust has settled between the Sun and Moon clans, I will take these people from the Su family away. I hope you won't interfere. Gong Sun Shui immediately guessed what he wanted to do. If it was in the past, she wouldn't have let him take them away so easily. However, it didn't matter now. She nodded without hesitation. All right, I'll leave them to you. The Moon clan won't say anything. Xiao Su was satisfied with her understanding of the situation. At this moment, Water Spirit appeared in front of everyone, full of murderous intent. Her eyes were full of madness. Where's Gong Sun Fei? I'm going to kill her. Everyone was stunned by her hatred and murderous aura. Shouldn't she be taking care of Feng Ling in the room right now? Why was she here? Xiao Su sensed that something was wrong with her. He looked at her and said, Water Spirit, what happened? These words seemed to have touched Water Spirit's fragile heart. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she was like a sparrow that had walked into a desperate situation. She cried out in despair, "Master, Feng Ling." Seeing her like this, everyone thought that Feng Ling couldn't be saved. Their expressions changed, and they all stood up. At this moment, Ethereal, who had followed behind them, saw that his master's face was so dark that he looked like he was about to kill someone. He immediately explained, "Feng Ling is still alive. However, he's not only severely injured, but he's also poisoned. The poison has spread to his eyes, and he's now blind. Although we've stabilized his condition, I'm afraid he has less than a year to live." How could this be? Xiao Su couldn't help but take a step back. He reached out to support himself on the table, his eyes full of disbelief. "Where is that person? I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her." Water Spirit had already gone mad. She turned around and was about to rush out. Xiao Su appeared behind her in a flash. He raised his hand and struck Water Spirit's neck. She immediately fainted. He handed Water Spirit to Qing Yanluo. "Take good care of her." Qing Yanluo nodded. She looked at the pitiful girl in her arms with pity, then brought her away to rest. Xiao Su turned to Ethereal. "Is there a chance of recovery?" Ethereal's throat was dry. He said with difficulty, "There's no way at the moment. The injuries that have accumulated over the past 10 years have already hollowed out his body. He's already in an unhealthy condition, and now he's poisoned. It's even more difficult. Even if the poison is cured, I'm afraid that his weak body won't be able to make it." Everyone present couldn't help but look away. Xiao Su's face revealed a trace of sadness. He clenched his fist, then loosened it after a moment. He slowly raised his hand and placed it on Ethereal's shoulder. "No matter what, we have to protect him. That's not just one life, but 2 lives." Everyone knew that if Wind Spirit died this time, Water Spirit would probably follow him. Ethereal's eyes were red. According to the extent of his injuries, he should have died more than 10 times. But he survived. This subordinate thinks that he should be able to do it this time as well. Even if he couldn't, he had to. It was unusually cold today. The wind in the evening was even stronger. Hua Ling came out of Wind Spirit's room and ran straight to the tall tree in the courtyard. He smashed his fists on the thick tree trunk, creating several holes in the dark tree trunk. The back of his hand was also bleeding. But he didn't seem to feel anything. He dejectedly leaned against the tree trunk, looking at the people who were rushing back. He slowly opened his mouth, his voice somewhat drifting. "Turan, why do you think that person who can laugh, teach people a lesson, and patiently teach me martial arts, is just lying there quietly, covered in scars, as if he's not breathing? I really fucking hate him." Turan stood still. He looked at the person who was always laughing, covering his eyes and crying silently. His eyes, gradually, also turned red. Men don't cry easily, only when they're deeply hurt. Chapter 1674. Turan's return was an accident. Because he and Mu Ling were assisting Jean Xian on the front lines, Xiao Su did not tell them about Feng Ling to prevent them from being distracted. This time, they brought back good news. When the Su family attacked the Ri family, they were defeated by them one by one. Now that the Su family was defeated, Jean Xian was absorbing the Su family's army, which was very satisfying. The only fly in the ointment was that Siyu had escaped. However, they had already sent people to pursue him. They believed that it would not be long before they caught him. It was also because they had arrived at Luoqing that they knew that their master and the young consorts were also here. They immediately rushed to report. When Turan and the others found out that Feng Ling did not die in the battle at Ci Shui Slope, they were wild with joy. However, when they found out that he had experienced inhumane treatment and was seriously injured, they wanted to skin Su Yu and the others alive. Previously, Chu Qingyan and the others had lived in an inn. Now that Su Yu had lost power, Gong Sun Fei had been arrested, and Feng Ling was seriously injured and could not be moved. After discussion, they decided to temporarily live in Gong Sun Fei's residence. Gong Sun Fei was not a good person in any way. The only good thing about her was that she knew how to enjoy life. This residence was even more comfortable and luxurious than Gongsun Fei's palace. It was also very suitable for the two pregnant women at home. Thus, Xiaosu personally went back to pick up his wife and settled her down here. Chu Qingyan had already learned about Fengling at the inn. Later, in the carriage, she heard her big ice cube's explanation. She could not help but sigh in her heart. Thus, when she entered the residence and saw Water Spirit, she did not say anything. She gave Water Spirit a hug. At this time, words of comfort were not as warm as a hug. The tears that had accumulated in Water Spirit's eyes instantly flowed down. She cried loudly, venting out all the pain, sorrow, fear, and despair in her heart. Chu Qingyan hugged her. She was pregnant, and it was easy for her emotions to fluctuate. She closed her eyes and cried. The person in her arms was crying like a child, so helpless. She was no longer the beautiful woman she had met for the first time. She had washed away all her glamour and was now so fragile. She looked at the person sleeping on the bed. Although his face was thin and his lips were pale, she could still imagine his elegant hair and handsome appearance. What a handsome man! It was a pity that he had been tortured for 10 years. She did not know if he would be able to endure this time. Little consort, do you think that Fengling will get better? Water Spirit was like a boat that had lost its course, helpless. Chu Qingyan hugged her tightly and nodded. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Didn't he endure for 10 years just to wait for you? Now that you are here, how could he give up so easily? Yes, yes, yes. She leaned on the shoulder of the little consort and looked at the person on the bed. Her tears flowed again. He has not seen me properly yet. He still wants to take me to see the peach blossoms for 10 miles. I still want to accompany him to see the stars on the stone peaks of Green Mountain. He will not give up like this. He has never been a person who admits defeat. Yes. There were 2 people standing outside the door. Even though they did not enter the room, they could hear the conversation inside clearly. Ethereal looked at her master's cold expression. She did not know if she should say something. Xiaosu glanced at Ethereal, who had a conflicted expression. He had never been a person who could hold back his words. He could tell from her expression. So he said coolly, "You and I are not strangers. If you have something to say it directly." Kong Ling sighed and looked up with a bitter expression. "Master, an hour ago, this subordinate and Little Yen conducted a thorough examination of Feng Ling's body and found that his internal organs were severely damaged. We also have some idea of the poison, but since ancient times, there has been no antidote for this poison. Originally, this poison wouldn't act up so quickly, but Feng Ling's body is too weak and the poison has already spread throughout his body. Originally, we said he would live for a year, but I'm afraid he won't even live for half a year." Xiaosu hadn't expected this result and was stunned for a moment. With Shui Ling and the little guy's words still ringing in his ears, Xiaosu turned his gaze to the distant mountains. The thick layer of fog made it impossible to see the road ahead. In the end, Kongling heard him say in a low voice, Yen was right just now. Since he managed to hold on until now, it means that he's not fated to die yet. Kongling, no matter what, I'm counting on you. We cannot lose Fengling." Ethereal's eyes were bitter. She tried to smile. All right. This subordinate will go and read the ancient book now. No matter what, I will protect his life. Xiaosu closed his eyes and nodded. When Chu Qingyan walked out of the room, only her big ice cube was outside. Xiaosu heard footsteps and turned around. Seeing her red eyes and nose, he walked up to her and reached out to touch her face. Are you in pain? She nodded and said softly, My heart is in pain. After crying, there was a nasal sound. Her voice was soft and pitiful. Xiaosu hugged her body and walked back. He wrapped her cold little hand in his palm and said in a low voice, Don't think too much. You have to pay more attention to the child in your belly. Big Ice Cube's expression was calm. She could not tell whether he was happy or angry, but she knew that Big Ice Cube was feeling worse than anyone else. She thought back to Feng Ling, who was lying quietly. Such an outstanding man had to go through so much torture. She could not help but sigh at the cruelty of the heavens. According to Ethereal, Suyu not only poisoned him to prevent him from escaping, but also pierced his shoulder blades with an iron chain so that he could not use his martial arts. Otherwise, how could the most outstanding subordinate trained by Big Ice Cube not be able to escape from the Su residence? Putting herself in the other's shoes, if she was the water spirit and the wind spirit suffered the same fate as the Big Ice Cube, she would probably already have the urge to destroy the world. One could imagine how water spirit was feeling right now. However, they were not involved. Perhaps the pain would be 100 or 1,000 times worse. The baby is very obedient in my belly. Maybe it knows that I'm in a bad mood. She lowered her head and stroked her belly. Only then did the sadness in her eyes lessen. This little monkey knew the severity of the situation. It had been bothering her for the past 2 days, but it was obedient today. Xiao Su placed his hand on the back of her hand and smiled faintly. If it's not obedient, I'll teach it a lesson for you when it comes out. Chu Qingyan pouted. Maybe you won't be able to bear it when the time comes. She did not forget that he said the same thing when she was pregnant with Kangkang. Later on, he doted on her more than anyone else. It was also after Kangkang started to remember things that he slowly created the image of a strict father. Xiao Su smiled but did not say anything. She must have hit the nail on the head. When they returned to the courtyard, Xiao Su said to her, Jin Xian will arrive in Luocheng in 2 days. Chu Qingyan was instantly overjoyed. Really? That's great. Although we've only been apart for half a year, I feel like I haven't seen him and Xining for a long time. I miss them so much. Xiao Su smiled and patted her head. At this time, only this news could divert her attention and stop her from wallowing in sorrow. Amidst her excitement, Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of something and said anxiously, wait, Jin Xian is the sect leader of the Sun clan. He's definitely at odds with the Yu clan. Miss Gongsun is here, they'll definitely meet. What should we do? Chapter 1675. After being reminded by the little fellow, Xiao Su also thought of this. But I remember that Miss Gongsun had nothing to do with the destruction of the Murong clan. She was only a few years old at the time. Chu Qingyan had already treated Gongsun Shui as one of her own, so she couldn't help but defend her. Even so, the relationship between the Sun clan and the Yu clan has long been predestined. We don't know what Gongsun Shui is thinking. Don't you think that the timing of her appearance here is a bit strange? Although he had been working hard to rescue Feng Ling, he knew the current situation between the Sun clan and the Yu clan. If he was the leader of the Yu clan, he would be guarding the capital to prevent the Sun clan from attacking. But Gongsun Shui did the opposite. She came to this dangerous place with only a few thousand people. It was not enough to fight against the Sun clan. He admired this woman who grew up in a similar environment to him. She was smart and patient. But at this moment, he couldn't understand what she was thinking. After hearing Big Ice Cube's words, Chu Qingyan thought about it carefully and found that it was true. Although we know Miss Gongsun Shui, this is a civil war between the 2 clans. We can't intervene, and we can't protect her. She came all the way here to save Feng Ling. What good does it do her? She couldn't figure it out. He frowned slightly. No matter what she is thinking, we have to tell second brother that Jin Xian is here. Let him remind Gongsun Shui. He didn't want to side with either side, but seeing that Gongsun Shui had done a lot to save Feng Ling, he felt that it was not wrong to remind her. Yes. Chu Qingyan nodded in agreement. 2 hours later, Xiao Yao appeared in front of Gongsun Shui's door. His expression was solemn, but when he raised his hand to knock on the door, his expression had already returned to its usual frivolous state. Before he knocked for the 3rd time, the door opened from the inside. Gongsun Shui raised her eyebrows and saw the person standing outside. She was slightly confused. What is it? Do I have to have something to ask of you? Xiao Yao opened his fan and said irritatingly. However, when his gaze fell on her messy hair, he wondered if she was sleeping just now. It would be lunchtime soon. Could it be that she had slept until now last night? He had never seen her sleep in before. She woke up before dawn every day. It was really strange. Knowing his character, Gong Sunshua didn't bother to talk to him. She turned around and walked away. Xiao Yao didn't stand on ceremony at all. After sitting down, he suppressed the speech he had prepared and looked at her face. He asked worriedly, "Are you sick? You don't look too good." When he first saw her, her face was so pale that he thought it was because the sunlight was too bright on her body. Now that he was in the room, he realized that it was because her face was too pale, with a trace of sickness. Ever since she was injured, he had never seen her face look so bad. He couldn't help but worry. Gong Sun Shui was slightly startled. Coincidentally, there was a mirror not far away. She saw her pale face and sighed in her heart. Perhaps she had been too busy recently and had forgotten to take her medicine. Or perhaps, she didn't think about it anymore. She took the teacup, opened the lid, and gently stirred the tea leaves floating on top. She said indifferently, "Maybe it's because I changed my bed. I can't sleep well." "It's fine." Xiao Yao nodded, but he didn't believe it. After knowing her for so long, he had never heard of her changing her bed. Maybe she had something she didn't want him to know. He felt a little uncomfortable. The ice beauty still treated him as an outsider and didn't want to tell him anything. "Although it's a new bed, your complexion is too bad. I'll ask Miss Cheng to take a look at you later." She knew that he was concerned about her, but for some reason, she had to reject him. "No need. The high priest and the others are coming. There will be doctors accompanying them. I'll let them take a look at me then." Xiao Yao's eyes darkened, but he quickly thought of something and raised his eyebrows. He couldn't sit still. "I heard from my big brother that Jin Xian, who is Murong Yunxian, will arrive in Luocheng in 2 days. He's afraid that the two of you will fight when you meet. How about I take you back to the capital now?" His imperial brother had looked for him just now because he wanted him to give her a reminder. After all, the hatred between the two sides was deeply rooted. Once they met, it would be unavoidable to avoid awkwardness. No matter which side got hurt, he didn't want to see it happen. But what was wrong with this ice beauty? She knew that the Su family had been defeated and this place would soon be occupied by the Ri clan. Instead of wanting to leave this place as soon as possible, she even brought the high priest and the others here. Could it be that she wanted to fight the Ri clan to the death here? But she didn't have many soldiers with her. Wasn't this throwing an egg at a rock? Gong Sun Shui knew that he was concerned about her, but she didn't think that at this time, he would stand on her side and want to take her away. Wasn't he Murong Yunchuan's man? Why? She was very puzzled. She thought that as long as it didn't affect the interests of the two clans, he would treat her well. But when the two clans met, he would leave her. After all, their paths were different. Xiao Yao's hand that was holding the fan paused. He didn't understand. "Why what?" She looked at him blankly. "Why don't you stay here? Why do you want to leave with me?" She looked at him blankly. Since some words had already been asked, there was no turning back. It was better to go down the dark path. Xiao Yao was stunned by the question. His handsome face was suspiciously red, but he covered it with his fan, only revealing a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. He coughed lightly. He was a little uncomfortable, but he still followed his heart and said seriously, "From the beginning to the end, I only want to stay by your side." Gong Sun Shui was stunned by his words. It was like a spring breeze had brushed past her heart, and something had begun to sprout. She couldn't stop it. She said timidly, "Xiao Yao, you don't have to do this." She didn't want to make things difficult for him, but maybe because her expression was a little bad, her words were as cold as usual, giving people the illusion that she was unreasonable. Xiao Yao thought that after being by her side for so long, even if she was a stone, she would have some warmth. He didn't expect that at this time, she would still treat him as an ordinary passerby. The red on his face faded completely. He stared at her, his smiling eyes full of disappointment and coldness. Is your heart made of stone? I've done so much. Have I never moved you? Gongsun Shui moved her lips, her fingers clenched. Finally, she lowered her eyebrows and restrained her trembling. She said softly, I'm sorry. There was no need to say anything. These 2 words were enough to explain everything. No need to be sorry. I forced it. Xiao Yao slowly stood up. His voice was still smiling like before. But if she raised her head, she would see how sad and hurt his eyes were. She listened to the sound of him leaving step by step until the door was closed. Only then did she clutch her chest. Blood flowed out from between her teeth, dripping onto the pure white hem of her clothes. Was the poison acting up early? Chapter 1676. Gongsun Shui stared blankly at the blooming plum blossoms on her clothes. After a while, she suddenly laughed very softly. He asked, Is your heart made of stone? I've done so much. Have you never been moved? She wanted to tell him no, but her chest hurt too much. The taste of blood was too strong. She didn't want him to see this side of her. That was why she hurt him and forced him to leave here. In the past, she didn't understand what it meant to say that a kind word would warm her in winter, but a vicious word would hurt her in June. For someone like her who was born to climb to a higher position, the teachings of others were that no one could disobey you. You were the king of the world. Now, she was learning from him. What was the 7 emotions and 6 desires? What was laughter? She slowly understood the fickleness of human nature. She knew that if someone was willing to open their arms for you to rely on, then a vicious word from you would be like a sharp sword stabbing into their heart. It was crueler than anyone else. She knew that he was one of the few people in the world who treated her wholeheartedly. She was like a lost person in the desert who longed for spring water, like a wanderer in the sea who longed for direction, like a child beggar who needed warmth in the cold winter. And he happened to have all that she longed for. She wanted to hold on to him. She didn't want anything else but his company. So she let herself sink into this gentleness that she shouldn't have hoped for. However, no matter how strong the wind was, it had to stop. Her life didn't allow her to stay in this short period of time. She didn't ask for a long time. She only wanted a dream. Now, the bloodstains in front of her reminded her that it was time to wake up. There was another knock on the door. Sect Master, it's me. Lan Si came. Gongsun Shui pursed her lips. She took a cloak from the side and put it on to cover the bloodstains on her body before letting him in. High Priestess, it's been hard on you. Gongsun Shui looked at the travel-worn person in front of her and said sincerely. There weren't many people in the Yu clan that she could trust. This old man in front of her who had watched her grow up was the person she trusted and respected the most. Lan Si waved his hand and said with a smile, do it while you still can. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to move in the future. After saying that, Lan Si stopped smiling and asked seriously, Sect Master, why did you summon me this time? Is there an urgent matter? Gongsun Shui raised her eyebrows, the Su clan has been defeated. Lan Si beamed with joy when he heard this. He had already heard about it on the way here. It was simply gratifying. However, it was a pity that the Su family was not defeated by them. This is a good thing. Does the sect master want us to take the opportunity to take back all the cities that the Su family has occupied? He had obeyed the sect leader's orders and brought over 100,000 soldiers. Now that the Sun race had just gone through a huge battle, it was likely that they had not recovered their strength yet. If they counterattacked, the Sun race would not be able to resist at all. In that case, the Sun race would be able to reclaim all of their cities. When that happened, the Sun race and the Moon race would be able to stand on equal footing and would not have to worry about being swallowed up. Wait. He received the sect master's order 3 days ago, but the Su clan had only been defeated 2 or 3 days ago. Could the sect master be a prophet? But Lan Si didn't think too much about it. Anyway, the sect master had always been smart. She was good at thinking ahead. Otherwise, she wouldn't have hidden her strength for so long in this wolf's den. Gongsun Shui looked at the happy high priestess. She was a little dazed. It had been a long time since she saw the high priestess so happy. It seemed that for so many years, she had been hiding her strength and secretly cultivating her forces. Even the people around her were on guard against the dangers that could come at any time. But now, she might have to disappoint the high priestess. No. Lan Si was stunned. Did he hear wrong? Then what does the sect master mean? He couldn't understand what this girl who was younger than him was thinking. Gongsun Shui didn't answer him. Instead, she changed the topic. High Priestess, Murong Yunxian will arrive in Luocheng in 2 days. As expected, Lan Si was attracted. He immediately blew his beard and glared. That brat came at the right time. We can fight with him and take revenge for the past year. Gongsun Shui smiled helplessly. The hatred between the Sun clan and the Moon clan was deeply rooted. If the high priestess was like this, then there was no need to talk about the others. Lan Si glanced at her expression and was a little puzzled. Sect master, do you have any plans? Gongsun Shui stood up and walked to the desk. Her cloak fell with her movements, drawing a beautiful arc in the air. She stood in front of the desk and opened the scroll. Lan Si walked forward to take a look. It was a map of North Korea. He couldn't help but look at her. Gongsun Shui looked at the map and slowly said, High Priestess, do you still remember my father's last wish? Lan Si's hand that was stroking his beard paused. He sighed softly. Your father always wanted to unify North Korea. Unfortunately, he died young. Even though Su Yu used some tricks to take over the Sun clan, it couldn't be considered a true unification. Yes. My father said that the hatred between the Sun clan and the Moon clan was too deep. If he wanted to unify them, he needed an opportunity. Gongsun Shui's gaze swept across the map and landed on Luocheng's location. She smiled faintly. Now, that opportunity has arrived. Lan Si's eyes lit up. Do you already have a plan? Gongsun Shui nodded. However, what she said made Lan Si's jaw drop. I do have a plan, but I can't guarantee that it will succeed. Moreover, the Sun clan and the Moon clan are co-rulers. I can't be the leader. High Priestess, I don't have much time left. Lan Si looked at her with tears in his eyes. Little girl, it's okay. The antidote is already being prepared. Gongsun Shui smiled gently. High Priestess, let's stop lying to ourselves. Are you still going to hide it from me? The doctors still haven't found the cause of my illness, right? If they hadn't found it, how could they prepare the antidote? Lan Si was extremely shocked. You know everything. Gongsun Shui nodded. 5 years ago, the medicine I took didn't have any effect. I summoned the doctors and interrogated them. Lan Si sighed heavily and smiled bitterly. I didn't think that you would also hide it from me. Why do we have to do this? It's for both of us to be at ease. Gongsun Shui replied softly. Lan Si looked at the little girl in front of him. His heart ached for her. Then the Sun clan and the Moon clan must have a leader. Sect Master, who is your candidate? Gongsun Shui comforted him. High Priestess, you don't have to worry. I already have a candidate. However, it's not the time to reveal it. I don't want to mess up the plan. She always had her own ideas. Lan Si didn't ask too much. However, he couldn't help but have a thought. Sect Master, have you thought about leaving a descendant? When the time comes, I can groom him. He can inherit your position in the future. You don't have to find someone else. Leave a descendant? Gongsun Shui was shocked. I think that second young Master Zhao's character and appearance are both top-notch. Sect Master, you can consider him. Have a child with that fool? Gongsun Shui instantly lost her ability to think. Chapter 1677. At this moment, Lan Si did not notice anything wrong with her expression and continued to spit, Sect Master, although that kid doesn't seem very reliable, after interacting with him, he's a rare talent. Moreover, he's deeply in love with you, so you can treat his illness while nurturing the next generation with him. Even in the end, you'll still have a bloodline to carry on. Lan Si couldn't bear to say the last sentence too clearly. The sect master was right. They had been deceiving themselves for more than 10 years. Could they continue like this? Only by seeing the situation clearly could they make the best decision. Lan Si was no longer as excited as before. He looked at Gongsun Xue and said, Sect Master, the bloodline of the Gongsun family can't end in your generation. If you're worried about second young Master Xiao, you can leave the child with me. It'll inherit your talent and intelligence and will definitely be a wise ruler. Gongsun Xue finally calmed down. Hearing the high priest's words getting more and more ridiculous, she couldn't help but interrupt him, High Priest, you don't have to worry about the continuation of the bloodline. The Gongsun family will have a descendant, but it won't be my child with Xiao Yao. Lan Si was stunned. Did the sect master already have a child without him knowing? He couldn't help but look at her lower abdomen. When did this happen? Who else could it be but Xiao Yao? The sect master moved so quickly and so stealthily. Gongsun Xue looked at the high priest's changing expression and her face darkened. How could she not know what he was thinking? However, she didn't want to explain. It was good that there was a misunderstanding. Otherwise, he would nag about her and Xiao Yao in front of her again. Since there was no ending, there was no need to get involved with him. Perhaps because he thought that she already had a descendant in her belly, Lan Si didn't mention it anymore. He was afraid that she would be shy, so he didn't ask who the father of the child was. Anyway, the person who could catch the sect master's eye couldn't be bad. He just felt sorry for Xiao Yao. Why don't you take second young Master Xiao into the palace? Lan Si was very satisfied with his suggestion. Gongsun Xue was a little speechless. What kind of benefits did this idiot give them? Not only Qiu Feng and the others, but even the high priest was bribed by him. They were all praising him. It was really a headache. High Priestess, the situation is tense now. It's not the time to talk about romance. Let's get back to the main topic. She coughed lightly and changed the topic. The high priest felt a little wronged in his heart. Taking in a concubine and inheriting the royal family was also a big matter. Sect leader, what plans do you have? Didn't they say that Murong Yunxian was coming? Should we avoid it? Lan Si only now remembered that she had missed something. No need. I want to personally meet the invincible new sect master of the Ri clan. Lan Si thought that he had misheard and his eyebrows jumped. Sect master, you can't do that. When two armies fought, the commander-in-chief would always be at the rear. How could he charge and break through the enemy lines at the front? To put it bluntly, weren't they just sitting ducks? Gongsun Xue shook her head as if she had already made up her mind. High Priest, I know what you want to say. You don't have to persuade me. I have my own plans. How could Lan Si agree to put herself in danger? Sect leader. You can't put yourself in danger. If there's anything you need, you can let this old one do it for you. This old one has lived for so long, and I'm not afraid of death. Gongsun Xue was a little touched. The high priest had doted on her since she was young. She had no parents, and he had let her experience the care and concern of an elder. It was a rare warmth in her life. She knew that if she didn't say anything, the high priest would definitely not let her go. In order to make sure that the plan went smoothly, she confessed some things. High priest, you also know that the Ri clan and Yu clan can't withstand the chaos of war. I don't want the country to be in ruins when North Korea is united. The purpose of our unification is to let the people live in peace and happiness. If our future happiness is built on their sacrifice, then their descendants won't be able to let it go. If the people complain, will the country still be the country, and will the family still be the family? Lan Si was touched by her words and listened attentively to what she had to say. She stood with her hands in front of her, and her gaze swept over the territory like a general who was giving instructions. She slowly said, "So, I want to use the simplest method to minimize the sacrifice to achieve our goal. This method is for the two leaders to sit down and use the world as a game of chess. They will play white and black chess pieces. The winner will be king, and the loser will be bandit. Whoever has the ability will be the ruler of the world. You want to play a game?" Lan Si didn't expect her to have such a bold idea. He was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. This game was not a game of chess, and it wasn't really a game of chess. It was a war between kings, and it didn't involve the people. Gong Suanxue looked up at him and smiled. "High Priest, do you trust me?" Lan Si looked into her eyes. He didn't know if it was because of Xiao Yao's appearance that this little girl who didn't like to smile could finally smile. He originally wanted to strictly reject her suggestion. When two kings fought, one of them would definitely be injured. It was hard to predict who would win, and no one could guarantee that they would win. However, when he saw her bright smile and full of confidence, as if everything was in her hands, Lan Si couldn't help but waver. This little girl rarely showed such a sharp side. Could it be that everything was in her hands? In the past, she had never made a mistake. Just like this time, she seemed to have known in advance that the Su family would fall, and had asked him to lead the troops here early. Lan Si's mind sank. In the battle for the throne, in addition to the military strength and manpower, the leader needed to devise strategies, and also a solitary courage. Only by seizing the opportunity could one climb to the top. In the end, he convinced himself and nodded. Since the sovereign has already decided, then this old man will do his best to support you. There is no objection. Thank you, High Priest. Gong Suanxue took a step back and bowed deeply to him. Thousands of words couldn't compare to the High Priest's indulgence towards her. Lan Si hurriedly helped her up. Sovereign, you are too serious. If there is anything you need, just tell me. This old man will help you arrange it. Lan Si left the room an hour later. Gong Suanxue remembered the trust in the High Priest's eyes and smiled bitterly. Although she didn't lie to the High Priest and everything she said was true, she did hide a part of the truth. That part was very important. She didn't lie, but she had hidden him into a misunderstanding. That idiot had said that sometimes, one's words, actions, and demeanor could confuse people. Therefore, the High Priest believed her without a doubt. Dumbo really knew how to scare people, but he wasn't wrong. Gong Suanxue turned to look outside the window. The leaves had all fallen, and only the bare branches were left. She lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. Withered trees would meet spring, flowers would bloom and wilt, and dynasties would change. It was only natural. However, she didn't know if she could wait until next year. She was so tired. She hoped that everything would end soon, and she would be free. Chapter 1678. Xiao Su was called to the study by Xiao Yao. Because the little fellow did not have a good appetite today, it took some time for him to coax her to eat. If not for Huo Ling telling him that there was something wrong with his second brother's expression, he would not want to leave the little fellow at all. When Xiao Su stepped into the study, he caught a glimpse of a dispirited person lying on the table with his back to him. He furrowed his brows without a trace. It had been a long time since Xiao Su had seen him so lifeless. As he thought of this, he quietly walked to the table and sat down. He asked, "What happened? Why do you look so dispirited?" Xiao Yao was in a daze. The sudden voice gave him a fright. He saw a black robe embroidered with auspicious clouds. He did not need to guess to know who it was. He continued to lie on the table and said in a muffled voice, "Imperial brother, the ice beauty said she won't leave." Xiao Su raised his brows. So it was about Gongsun Shui. And her people have already entered the residence. Who? Xiao Yao looked up at him. Xiao Su looked at his confused and surprised eyes and sighed softly. Lan Si, her high priestess, and her trusted aide. Xiao Yao's eyes widened. His lifeless eyes were filled with complex emotions. Then, a self-deprecating smile appeared at the corner of his eyes. The navy blue robe made his skin look too white, as if it was colorless. His voice was very soft, but it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. I didn't know that she had hidden so many things from me. Xiao Su did not speak. Xiao Yao slowly propped himself up. Instead of lying down, he propped his chin up with one hand. His black hair slid down along with his movements, and the fringe on his forehead covered his eyes. His true emotions couldn't be seen, but the disappointment that radiated from his body couldn't be ignored. Imperial brother. Xiao Su could not help but look at him. Xiao Yao smiled, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. Why do you think she stayed here? She knew that Jean Xian was coming and she sent her trusted aide. She did not know that when the Japanese army arrived, she would not have enough manpower. She would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It would be better for her to return to the Yu clan and make plans. Even now, second brother was still worried about her safety. Even if she was injured, she still had to force a smile and let him help her analyze it. Brother, a person has 1,000 faces, and each face is different. People like Gongsun Shui are the hardest to figure out. If an emperor's mind can be easily guessed, then he will not be able to protect the country. Sometimes, it is not intentional, but it is not easy to figure out people's minds. You have been with her for so long, but you still can't figure it out, let alone me. Xiao Su told the truth. Xiao Yao faintly sighed. He also understood this logic, but these days, her attitude towards him was different from others. He thought that he treated her differently. But every time he had this kind of feeling, he would be quickly slapped in the face. Imperial brother, I've lived for so many years without knowing why. I thought I didn't have a heart, but ever since I met her, Chindi realized that there was still a heart beating in my chest. He chuckled bitterly. In the past, there were countless people who chased after me. I never believed in love, I didn't believe in promises. I thought it was good to be alone without any attachments. However, when I was caught in my own trap and chased after someone like those people who didn't care in the past, I realized that we can control our own lives, but we can't control the beating of our hearts. You and third brother are a happy family of 3. In the past, I didn't envy you, but now, my views have changed. What can compare to a warm lamp waiting for you when you return? When you go out, she whispers in your ear. When you laugh, you have someone to keep you company. When you are down, you have someone to keep you company. When you are down, you have someone to keep you company. That person won't be like the rest of the world, who will praise you when you stand high and step on you when you fall. No one liked to wander around. It was just that they had not met a parasol tree that they could stop at. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and looked at his second brother who was talking slowly. Are you done? Xiao Yao widened his eyes and looked at him with sadness. But he was frightened by the sharpness in his eyes. He subconsciously shrank his neck. He wanted to say no, but when it reached his mouth, it became, I'm done. Xiao Su's voice was calm. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. You can be enlightened and have a yearning for a family. As your brother, I am very happy for you, but, Xiao Yao's curiosity was piqued by his words until he continued. But in my opinion, the yearning for a wife that you described just now does not match Gong Sunshui at all. A warm lamp accompanying you and whispering to you. Is this really the Gong Sunshui I know? Xiao Su's words mercilessly revealed the truth. Xiao Yao imagined the ice beauty sitting at home, waiting for him to come back, smiling at him when he was warm, and giving him instructions in a soft voice. He chuckled. It was completely unimaginable. What Imperial Brother said was the truth. Ah, he slammed the table. Seeing his second brother's cracked expression, Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a trace of a smile. But Xiao Yao, who was immersed in his grief, did not notice. Don't pretend. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Xiao Yao's face stiffened. He hesitantly raised his head. Imperial brother, you know everything? Humph, you said so much just because you want me to protect her when they get into a conflict. Xiao Su finished speaking and glared at him. So unambitious. His sadness earlier was real, but compared to her safety, he was more concerned. Xiao Yao immediately smiled and stood up. He attentively massaged his brother's arms and asked fawningly, then, Imperial brother, do you mean to help or not? Xiao Su rolled his eyes at him. He really couldn't understand why he had such a fool who was still worried about counting money after being sold. Her snow-white slender fingers lightly tapped on the table, and the soft sound made Xiao Yao's heart beat with a thump-thump. What did Imperial brother mean by this? He didn't need to look to know that Xiao Yao's eyes were constantly darting around. Xiao Su didn't even look and knocked his head accurately. Xiao Yao yelped. He then heard his brother say, Sister-in-law, of course I have to help. Xiao Yao instantly beamed. I knew that Imperial brother is the best. Xiao Su snorted. After resolving the burden in his heart, Xiao Yao looked at him with a wronged and innocent expression. Xiao Su felt his hair stand on end from his gaze. He said unhappily, what is it now? Imperial brother, this younger brother has a question. Back when you were pursuing Imperial sister-in-law, were you also plagued with misfortune? Xiao Yao blinked and looked at him with his fingers. Xiao Su looked down at him with disdain. Ayan and I were already engaged. Our past experiences were just seasonings before marriage. It's different from you. Xiao Yao stared blankly at his imperial brother's departing figure. It took him a while to regain his senses. Ah, he was stuffed with dog food again. Imperial brother, bad man. However, after fuming for a while, he felt for the folding fan beside the table and gently opened it. The look in his eyes gradually faded, leaving only a bit of tenderness and persistence. If it was so easy to pursue the ice beauty, then she wouldn't be him. How could he give up on the person he had set his eyes on so easily? Just like what Imperial sister-in-law said, he had to be an unkillable cockroach. Although he didn't know who a cockroach was, he didn't care who it was. His words were crude but his reasoning was not. He stood up and stretched. His lips curled into a carefree smile. He first went to eat something delicious to recharge his energy, then he prepared to continue his journey to melt the ice beauty. Chapter 1679. Gong Suanxue didn't know what Xiao Yao had done for her behind her back, nor did she know that she didn't chase him away, but instead encouraged him to walk towards her step by step. However, even if she knew, at this moment, she wouldn't be able to reciprocate his sincerity. It would only add to her sadness. Qing Yu entered the door and quickly reported, Sovereign, the Japanese army will enter the city tomorrow. Gong Suanxue looked up from the book, her eyes as calm as a lake. I know. Qing Yu knew a little about her plan from the high priest. At this time, he had some thoughts in his mind, but his face showed hesitation, not knowing whether to speak or not. Is there anything else? Gong Suanxue looked at him in confusion. Qing Yu gathered her courage and looked at her. Sect Master, it's too dangerous for you to stay here. You can leave the negotiations with the Japanese to someone you can trust. Right now, your safety is the most important thing. If the Japanese are unwilling to negotiate with you, they will outnumber us. The situation will be very disadvantageous. Gong Suanxue shook her head and said firmly, I can't do this. Even the high priest can't persuade me, so you don't have to persuade me. Just follow the plan. Qing Yu opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he met her gaze, he couldn't help but swallow his words. Yes, the sect master looked so weak, but in reality, she was a woman of her word. No one had ever been able to change her mind. As a subordinate, all he could do was to be loyal to his duty. This subordinate understands. Hearing the door close, Gongsun Shui put down the book in her hand and rubbed between her eyebrows. They had only seen the tip of the iceberg of her plan, and they could not bear it. If everything was revealed to the world, how would they react? But by then, everything would be settled, and it would not be up to them to decide. Qing Yu and the others were all brought up by her. She must use the remaining time to plan the future for them so that their loyalty to her for more than 10 years would not be in vain. Just as she was deep in thought, an unexpected guest came to Xiao Yao's courtyard. Why was it an accident? Because Xiao Yao would never have guessed that this person would come looking for him. The high priest's presence really makes me feel flattered. Xiao Yao stood up and greeted him warmly. This person was the Ice Beauty's favorite, he couldn't offend him. Yes, he had to curry favor with him. Come, sit, sit. This is Yuqian Longjing, High Priest, try it. This is a few desserts specially made by the chef. High Priest, try it. As soon as Lan Si entered the door, Xiao Yao's words made him dizzy. He waved his hand and pushed the plate Xiao Yao, to get Xiao Yao's right. And is teat are of are. There's no need to be so courteous. This old man is tired. Hearing his words, Xiao Yao turned around and saw that he didn't seem to be joking. His upright posture immediately collapsed and he returned to his original state. He lazily leaned against the back of the chair and said with a smile, High Priest, since you said so, it means that you treat me as one of your own. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony. High Priest, feel free to order whatever you want to eat or drink. Just treat this place as your own. If you didn't treat him as part of the Ice Beauty's family, Xiao Yao wouldn't be so courteous. In his life, there was no such word before. The high priest saw that he didn't know how to sit properly. The corners of his eyes twitched. Forget it, he was used to him being so straightforward. It was comfortable to talk to him. This old man came to find you because I have something to ask for your help. Oh. What is it that the high priest can't solve and needs my help? Xiao Yao chuckled. He looked like he was taking pleasure in the high priest's misfortune. The high priest glared at him. It's about the sect leader. With that, he successfully saw Xiao Yao turn serious. The high priest nodded in his heart. He didn't misjudge this kid. He treated the sect leader with sincerity. Xiao Yao immediately asked, What's wrong with the Ice Beauty? The high priest sighed. Qiu Feng told me today that the sect leader hasn't eaten much these 2 days. She hasn't touched her chopsticks at all. This old man is very worried. This has never happened before. I don't know if the sect leader, before he finished speaking, there was only a teacup left in front of him. Smoke rose in spirals. The high priest stroked his beard and smiled. He could go back with peace of mind. In the room, Gong Suanxua looked at Xiao Yao who suddenly appeared in front of her. She blinked, thinking that she was hallucinating. After confirming that the person who was waiting for her with deep hatred was indeed Xiao Yao, she couldn't help but put on a stern face. Didn't I tell you before? Even if you have something to do, you have to leave through the door. Don't go through the window. It's faster to go through the window. What if you don't open the door for me? Wouldn't I be wasting my time? Xiao Yao said righteously. Gong Suanxue was rendered speechless by his twisted logic. Then what are you doing here? She thought that after that day, he would never treat her as a friend again. Before Xiao Yao could answer, there was a knock on the door. Qiu Feng's voice sounded. Gong Suanxue glanced at Xiao Yao and let her in. Qiu Feng came in, followed by 2 maids who were carrying dishes. After the table was filled with dishes, Qiu Feng tactfully retreated. Only she and Xiao Yao were left in the room. Explain. She glanced at the person in front of her who was scooping soup for himself. Xiao Yao snorted. I haven't eaten anything for a day. You have to eat with me. She didn't ask why he didn't eat, because she already knew the answer when she saw him ladle a full bowl of food for her. Since he wanted to let her eat, then she would let him have his way. the two of them didn't speak and quietly finished the meal. Xiao Yao realized that every time he gave her food, she didn't reject it. He was very satisfied. However, the Ice Beauty's obedience today was just too surprising. When he put down his chopsticks, Xiao Yao wanted to praise her, but Hu Ling appeared. He said that his royal brother was looking for him. He didn't even think about it as he warned the Ice Beauty before quickly leaving. After he left, the blush on Gong Sunshue's face that she was using her internal strength to hold back disappeared like water, leaving her pale white. Wu, Qiu Feng listened to Xiao Yao's orders and came in to take away the dishes. However, she saw her sect master holding onto the table and spitting out a mouthful of blood. She cried out in shock, "Sect master!" Gong Sunshu sharply looked up at her, "Don't make a sound." Qiu Feng had never seen this kind of sect master before, so she immediately closed her mouth. At this time, Qing Yu's voice came from outside the door. Gong Sunshue's eyes turned cold as she ordered, "Clean it up." The meaning was to not let Qing Yu know. Qiu Feng was very anxious, but she still obeyed. When the door opened, Qing Yu looked up. She never thought that the sect master would personally open the door. She was stunned at first before immediately reporting, "Sect master, Murong Yunxian entered the city early. He should be in the palace now." Gong Sunshu revealed a faint smile. "He's here. It was good to be a bit early. We'll go meet him later." Chapter 1680. Jean Xian's early arrival in the city was a pleasant surprise for everyone. Chu Qingyan immediately headed for the door when she heard the news. If Xiao Su hadn't stopped her, she would have squeezed her way to the door. Xiao Su's head hurt. With her agility, he couldn't tell that she was pregnant at all. "He'll be here soon. You'll see him sooner or later. There are too many people now, so you should stop for a while." Xiao Su pretended to be cold to scare her. However, pregnant women were the most important. Chu Qingyan was pregnant now, and not only was her belly growing, her temper was also growing. She said angrily, "I'll just go to the door. It's not a problem. Don't be so overbearing." He kept her restrained all day and couldn't let her go anywhere. She was so bored that grass was about to grow on her head. Under the silver mask, a hint of helplessness flashed across his inky eyes. He raised his hand to caress her face and coaxed softly, "When you give birth to the child, I'll accompany you wherever you want to go." This was the second child. With the experience of the first child, he could deal with the little fellow's temper with ease. As expected, Chu Qingyan stopped when she heard this. She rubbed against his palm. "I also want to eat all the delicacies in the world." Looking at his wife who was like a lazy kitten, Xiao Su curved his lips. "As you wish." Chu Qingyan had just opened her mouth when she heard a discordant voice cut in. "Yo yo yo, what kind of scandal is this in broad daylight in front of so many people?" Xiao Yao waved the fan in his hand as he leisurely flashed in. However, the fan in his hand blocked his face, revealing a pair of mischievous peach blossom eyes as he looked them up and down. His royal brother and sister-in-law were always showing off their affection. They should at least consider the feelings of the single people like them. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and fanned the air. She turned to ask the person beside her, "Big Ice Cube, do you smell something sour coming from somewhere?" Xiao Su saw her winking at him, and he couldn't help but smile. He said cooperatively, "Indeed, someone probably can't eat grapes and is jealous of grapes." Xiao Yao twisted the paper fan in his hand. His face was filled with grief and indignation, but his heart was filled with tears. It was one thing for these two to spread dog food, but they were even bullying him. Once he got the beauty back, he would definitely turn the tables in front of them. At this time, Wu Ling strode in with a rare look of joy on his face. "Master, little princess, Jean Xian and Mu Ling have returned. They've already entered the door." With that said, before Chu Qingyan could even smile, Wu Ling's figure flashed, revealing the high-spirited person behind him. "Master, your subordinate has returned." The cold voice could not hide the joy and excitement in it. A man dressed in black appeared in everyone's line of sight. He had a lean body, a knife-like appearance, and an increasingly calm temperament. Who else could it be but Jean Xan? He didn't wait for Chu Qingyan to stand up as he walked in front of her in 3 steps. He knelt down with his hands clasped in front of him and his eyes were red with excitement. "Master, your subordinate has returned." It was the same sentence, but it was filled with different emotions. However, Chu Qingyan received this affection. She stood up and supported her waist as she walked in front of him. Looking at his thin but spirited appearance, she was moved and proud. She wanted to praise him for his achievements in the past year, but when the words came out of her mouth, they were choked with sobs. "You've become thinner and darker." Jean Xian smiled when he heard this. "Didn't you always say that a man shouldn't be so white? It's not like I'm a girl. Isn't this subordinate following your teachings?" Chu Qingyan glared at him with a smile. "As expected, you're different after seeing the world. You even know how to talk back." Jean Xian quickly said, I don't dare. "Alright, I'm just joking with you. Hurry and get up. You're already the leader of a clan, how could you be seen like this by others?" Chu Qingyan wanted to reach out to help him up, but Jean Xian saw her bulging belly and his highness glaring at her from the side. How could he dare trouble his master, so he stood up on his own. Seeing him take 2 steps back and stand still in fear, Chu Qingyan couldn't help glaring at the person beside her. This vinegar jar. At this time, she heard Jean Xian speak. "Master, this subordinate is only temporarily managing the Ri clan. I don't really want to stay here. Also, no matter what this subordinate's identity is, you are this subordinate's master. No matter what happens, this is an eternal fact. Therefore, this subordinate should kneel to you." Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened when she heard this. Looking at the resolute person in front of her, she couldn't help but think of the first time they met more than 10 years ago. She didn't expect that a fire would strengthen their relationship. When Ji Linyang and the others entered the door, they heard Jean Xian's words and couldn't help but nod. This person was loyal and righteous. When he was in trouble, he was humble. When he was proud, he was humble. When he was proud, he was humble. Xiao Su went forward to hug his little wife. When he saw that her eyes were red because of Jean Xian, he was a little unhappy. However, he still gave her a seat and asked, "Why did you enter the city early?" Jean Xian sat down and replied, "The army has already arrived outside the city. This subordinate and Xining miss master very much, so we entered the city first. As for the soldiers, this subordinate doesn't have to worry about them. I forgot because I was too happy. Where is Xining?" Chu Qingyan looked outside the door and didn't see anyone. She was a little suspicious. Jean Xian revealed a smile. This subordinate rode a horse. She sat in a carriage. She was slower than this subordinate, but I think she will be here soon. Speak of the devil. A clear voice sounded from outside the door. Master, this servant is back. Everyone smiled. If they weren't family, they would enter the same house. These two even said the same thing when they came back. They had such tacit understanding. Xining was wearing a lake blue brocade robe. There was a circle of fox fur around her neck and a well-made cloak. There were 2 servant girls following behind her. She looked like the mother of a clan. She didn't have the timid appearance she had when she was in the King of England's residence. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Sure enough, clothes made the man. Xining's outfit showed off all her good points. She held her head high and her chest out. Her temperament didn't lose to that of a young lady from a noble family. Her years of careful training had not been in vain. Now, it was showing. From the corner of her eyes, she saw that Jean Xian was looking at Xining without blinking. He couldn't hide the affection in his eyes. She secretly laughed in her heart. It was obvious that these 2 people had already achieved a positive result. Xining threw herself in front of her and hugged her waist. She looked at her with teary eyes and felt wronged. Master, Xining missed you so much. I also missed little master. I also missed you so much. I'm not used to not having you by my side. But it's good that you're back. It's been hard on you. Chu Qingyan was also a little choked up. She touched her face and saw that she had grown a lot taller. Her facial features had also become more beautiful. Her heart was very comforted. It was the feeling of having a little sister who had just grown up. Mu Ling also arrived later. Turan had arrived a day earlier than them. At this time, Hua Ling, Ethereal, and the others had gathered with them. They were talking about what they had seen and heard along the way. The retired emperor also came in after hearing the news. When these living treasures met, the atmosphere immediately became lively. Chapter 1681. Jean Xian looked at this joyous and harmonious scene, and his heart was filled with emotion. From the front lines where the flames of war raged, the schemes of mutual deception, and the hypocritical exchanges, he once again felt the sincerity of affection. Only by being by his master's side could he feel the warmth of a home. During this period of time, he had met quite a number of members of the Murong clan's branch families. They used their status to flatter him, and they dared to say anything against their will. They only wanted to get some benefits from him. Did they really think that he had forgotten how they had bullied and humiliated him after so many years? Although they were related by blood, they were not as good as the people around him who were sincerely thinking about him. Just as Jean Xian was immersed in this long-lost warmth, he heard His Highness's question. How is the war? Xiao Su peeled an orange and placed it in the little fellow's hand as he asked casually. Jean Xian's expression immediately became serious. The Ri clan has basically recovered and sent people to take over. A portion of the army has been sent to build cities and settle the people. Because the Ri clan has been ruled for nearly 10 years, the people are afraid of being bullied by the Yu clan. It will take some time for them to return to their former prosperity. We originally did not send troops to the Yu clan so quickly, but we did not expect the Su clan to be impatient and launch a sneak attack first. This subordinate discussed with Turan and the others to pursue the victory. However, the Su clan is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. In addition, we have the advantage of time, place, and people. After fighting for nearly a month, we defeated them. Now that the army has entered the Yu clan's territory, they have begun to recruit the soldiers under the Su clan. I believe that in less than a month, we will be able to annex the cities in Su Yu's hands. However, it is a pity that this subordinate was not able to capture Su Yu personally and let them escape. However, this subordinate has already sent people to pursue them. As long as they are still in North Korea, I do not believe that they will not be caught. On the way here, he had already heard about what happened to Gongsun Fei and Feng Ling. He did not have a good impression of the Su clan. If it were not for them, his master would not have to run around while carrying a child. When he returned, he would increase the search efforts and capture these people as soon as possible. Jean Xian was also a protective person. Well, other than that, what do you plan to do next? Xiao Su continued to ask. Now that the little fellow was here, if they were to continue fighting, he had to make plans early. He had to bring the little fellow and his family to a safe place to avoid being affected. Xiao Yao was sitting at the side. When he heard this, he immediately sat up straight and stared at Jean Xian. This was what he wanted to know as well. Jean Xian had a difficult expression on his face when he was asked this question. However, he did not avoid it. Everyone present was someone he could trust, so he told them about the differences between him and his followers. This subordinate originally wanted to take back the territory because I couldn't stand the people of the Yu clan acting tyrannically in the Ri clan's territory and harming the people. It was also for the sake of mother and master's expectations. After taking back the territory, this subordinate planned to use the strength of the two clans to contend against each other to force the current clan leader of the Yu clan to hand over the murderer who framed the Murong clan. However, this subordinate didn't expect the Su clan to take the initiative to provoke them. Not only did they cross the boundary, but they also occupied the Yu clan's territory. However, he already knew about the internal strife of the Yu clan, so he did not communicate with the clan leader of the Yu clan and directly crossed the boundary. However, what made him very confused was that this time, the battle with the Yu clan had been won very smoothly. It was so smooth that he could not believe it. It was as if someone had secretly helped him, but no matter how he investigated, he could not find out who it was. However, now it is difficult to stop halfway. My subordinates want to directly lead the army into the Yu clan's capital, but this subordinate does not want to fight anymore. It is a pity that after sitting in this position, I realize that there are many things that I can't do. Although he was the person in charge and most of the time, when it came to the grievances between the Ri clan and the Yu clan, the Ri clan's generals all said that they wanted the Yu clan to pay the blood debt in blood. Even if he knew that the matter back then had nothing to do with the current clan leader. This was the voice of the people. It was difficult to control the voice of the people. This was the advantage of talking to smart people. Xiao Su only asked one question, and Jin Xian already knew what he wanted to know. He told him the most important thing. Most of the people present were used to scheming and plotting, and could understand Jin Xian's dilemma. The person in charge could not do as he pleased at all times. The people were like water, and the emperor and his officials were like boats. Water could carry the boat, but it could also capsize the boat. They had seen too many Yu clan soldiers harm the Ri clan's people all the way from the Ri clan. Their actions were infuriating, so now that a son like Jin Xian had appeared to illuminate their future, how could they let go of the enemy who had caused them so much pain all these years? Naturally, they would pursue the victory. They did not care if the person who had ordered the attack was the current clan leader. If the person was blinded by hatred, as long as they were related to the Yu clan, they would not let them go easily. However, Chu Qingyan and the others knew that Gongsun Shui had only been in power for the past few years. She could barely manage the Yu clan's affairs. As for the Ri clan, they were far away and were controlled by the Su clan. Gongsun Shui could not interfere at all. She was innocent in the hatred between the Sun clan and the Yu clan. It was because of this that Xiao Yao could not sit still. He closed his fan and looked at Jin Xian seriously. Jin Xian, now that you have taken over half of the Yu clan's territory, and the Yu clan has paid the price for the mistakes they have made over the years, can you not send troops to the capital city? Ice Beauty, no, I mean clan leader Yu Yu, she is also a victim of this disaster. Many times, she had no choice. Didn't you say that you wanted to find the person who ordered the massacre of your clan? If you find the culprit, I hope that you can let her go. Jin Xian was a little surprised that Xiao Yao would speak up for clan leader Yu Yu. However, looking at everyone's expressions, they did not seem surprised. It seemed to be within reason. Could it be that something had happened during this time? Because Jin Xian was at the front lines, he naturally did not know about Xiao Yao and Gongsun Shui. Chu Qingyan looked at the solemn Xiao Yao and sighed softly in her heart. Then, she said to Jin Xian, that clan leader Yu Yu became friends with us by accident. She is now living in this residence. What? She was here. Jin Xian was shocked. Before he could react, there was a commotion outside the door. Then, a group of people walked in. The person in the lead was dressed in a snow-white brocade robe. Her sleeves and skirt were embroidered with large blooming national flowers using blue silk thread. Apart from this, there were no other decorations. Her sleeves were of the same color, and she exuded a noble and dignified aura. She wore boots of the same color, and her hair was tied up with a golden jade crown. 2 strands of black hair fell beside her cheeks. Her facial features were exquisite, and her eyes were black. They were naturally cold. Clan leader Yu Yu has arrived. A loud voice announced. Chapter 1682. The person who suddenly appeared in the hall could only be described with one word, handsome. At first glance, no one recognized that this person was Gongsun Shui. If not for her loud voice, they would have thought that she was a handsome young master. This was the first time Xiao Yao saw her in men's clothing. She was so handsome. Seeing everyone's stunned eyes, he put away his infatuated face and felt proud. She was indeed the person he liked. But soon, he realized that something was wrong. Wait, Jean Xin just came back and she came to find him. What was the ice beauty trying to do? Not only was Xiao Yao surprised, Chu Qingyan and the others were also confused. Wasn't Gong Suanxue taking the initiative to walk into the muzzle of the gun? Gong Suanxue had already expected everyone's reaction. She didn't look at Xiao Yao who was trying to signal her. She nodded to Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su, then her eyes wandered around the crowd. She asked calmly, "May I ask which one of you is Sect Master Murong Yunxian?" As soon as she finished speaking, everyone's expression changed. Thinking of her current status, could it be that she couldn't hold back and wanted to directly confront Jean Xin? Xiao Yao heard this and immediately looked to his brother for help. The latter rolled his eyes. If Gong Suanxue wanted to die, he might not be able to stop her. Jean Xin was not a fool. He could clearly feel everyone's reaction. He thought that Sect Master Yuyue must be a very important friend to his master. He couldn't help but stand up and salute her. He replied in a neither intimate nor cold manner, "This one is Sect Master Yuyue, but I am not the Sect Master of the Sun Clan. I am only temporarily managing the affairs. This one and Sect Master Yuyue have never met before. What business does Sect Master Yuyue have with this one?" In fact, when Gong Suanxue opened her mouth to ask, she saw Jean Xin sitting in the crowd. This man had an outstanding temperament and was handsome. Most importantly, his appearance was very similar to an old friend. When he admitted it himself, her suspicions were confirmed. If someone didn't know, seeing this scene, Gong Suanxue's politeness and Jean Xin's decent response, they would think that it was a friendly first meeting and that they were asking each other about their identities. However, those who knew what was going on were all worried. They didn't know what Gong Suanxue was going to do next. Although Jean Xin had only brought a few of his trusted aides into the city, if Jean Xin's people wanted to attack him, Chu Qingyan would be the first to object and protect him to the end. However, if Jean Xin wanted to attack Gong Suanxue, Xiao Yao would not just stand by and watch. Therefore, no matter which side was going to make a move, it was not a situation they wanted to see. However, the grudge between the Sun-Moon race and the Sun-Moon race was something that outsiders like them couldn't interfere with. They could only wait and see. They could only plan for the worst-case scenario so that a fight wouldn't break out. The atmosphere was very strange. Unexpectedly, Gong Suanxue began to observe Jean Xin carefully. It did not seem like she was trying to figure out an opponent. Even though Jean Xin was able to command an army of thousands, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine. This person had come and observed him without saying a word. What was she trying to do? After a moment of silence, Gong Suanxue broke the awkward atmosphere. Although you are only temporarily in charge of military affairs, I still call you Sect Master Murong. Jean Xin did not mind. Gong Suanxue was very satisfied with his attitude. She was looking forward to what was going to happen next. Sect Master Murong, the Sun-Moon race's army is already outside Luocheng. Luocheng is 7 cities away from the capital city, but I believe that with your strength, you will be able to reach the city in less than 3 months. I am not saying this because our army is weak, but because your army's morale is high, and our army is not strong enough. It is only a matter of time before we lose the war. However, I believe that Sect Master Murong is a person who loves the people as much as his own children. You have been restraining your soldiers all the way here, and you have not taken a single needle or a piece of thread from the people. What is Sect Master Gong Suanxue trying to say? When Jean Xin heard her words, it was as if she was denying their side and affirming the other side. How could this kind of words that boosted the morale of others without diminishing their own prestige appear from the head of a sect? Jean Xin didn't understand, but he still looked at her calmly on the surface. As soon as Gong Suanxue spoke, Chu Qingyan and the others knew that they had become outsiders and could not interfere. So, they sat aside and watched quietly. It's very simple. In ancient times, when two armies fought, in order to avoid hurting the innocent, the commander would go out and fight. I think we can do the same. No one had expected Gongsun Shui to say such a heavy hammer so casually. For a moment, no one could react. Xiao Yao was the first to recover. He said angrily, "What are you doing? Do you want to fight with Jin Xin? Why are you so impulsive?" Gongsun Shui shook her head at him, indicating that he should not speak. Xiao Yao could not suppress the worry and anger in his chest. Just as he was about to stand up, he was stopped by an outstretched hand. He turned his head and met his brother's eyes, indicating that he should not be rash. Let's see what she plans to do. Since his brother had spoken, there should not be any problems. Only then did Xiao Yao reluctantly sit down. Gongsun Shui looked at Xiao Su gratefully. If this fool had made a scene, he would have disrupted her plans. Fortunately, his brother was able to suppress him. Jin Xin looked at everyone's expressions and thought for a moment. Then, he said, "Sect Master Gongsun, why are you so confident that I will agree? Just as you said, your army is no match for us. Our army will be able to invade your capital sooner or later. Why should we fight with you? To put it bluntly, if I lose, won't I lose this great opportunity to unify the two races? So why don't Sect Master Gongsun return to your Moon Clan? We will meet again on the battlefield." Xiao Yao could tell that Jin Xin was giving the Ice Beauty a way out and allowing her to return to the Moon Clan. He could not wait to agree on behalf of the Ice Beauty. However, if he had this intention, Gongsun Shui would not have appeared here. It seemed like this person was taking into account her relationship with the Shao family. That was why he was giving her face. Unfortunately, she had already prepared everything. How could she return empty-handed? She shook her head at Jin Xin and said, "That is not the case. This suggestion is the best solution for both you and the Sun-Moon race. Although I said that we do not have enough military strength, you have forgotten one thing. If we are determined to fight to the death, it will not be so easy for you to invade our city. Furthermore, humans can conquer nature. Our Moon Clan has many smart and brave generals. If we work together and are familiar with the terrain, it is not impossible for us to win against you. So, under the premise that we do not harm the civilians and cause more casualties, this is the only way. This is not my stalling tactic, nor am I trying to scheme against you. You should have seen the damage that war can do to a country. As the leaders of both sides, the first thing we have to consider is the people's livelihood, not hatred. So, are you willing to accept the challenge?" Chapter 1683. Gong Sunshue's words shocked everyone, but they weren't without reason. Jin Xin lowered his head and thought for a moment, then turned to look at his master. Chu Qingyan received his inquiring gaze and smiled. "You are now the leader of the Japanese. You can decide what you want to do and what you want to do. No matter what, I will support you." Jin Xin nodded obediently. Gong Sunshu saw the interaction between the two and couldn't help but be a little surprised. Why does it seem like Murong Yunxian always listens to Chu Qingyan? It was only then that she noticed the arrangement of their seats. Even though he was the sect lord of the Sun race, he was only seated below Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. Furthermore, he wasn't even in a position of honor. Could it be that the sect lord of the Sun race's status wasn't the highest among them? Only then did she re-examine the status of Xiao Su and the others. Did she overlook something? But before Gong Sunshu could think about it, Jin Xin had already given a reply. He looked at Gong Sunshu with bright eyes and replied in a steady and powerful voice. Sect leader Gong Sunshu is right. The reason why this humble one decided to revolt was because I saw the people being persecuted and their lives were not guaranteed. Now that sect leader Gong Sunshu thinks this way, we coincide. If we can use the simplest method to reduce the casualties and solve the problem, why not? But what does sect leader Gong Sunshu want to do? Jin Xion's words showed that he accepted the challenge. Gong Sunshu was very satisfied that he could think this way. She thought it would take some time to convince him, but this was just right. His personality was to her liking. Because of Jin Xian's words, everyone's eyes fell on Gong Sunshui. If it could avoid a war between the two armies, Gong Sunshui's method could be considered the best. But it was a little surprising that Gong Sunshui proposed it. If she didn't have full confidence, she would be courting death. Gong Sunshui smiled faintly. I am very happy that sect leader Murong can accept. Then let's decide the winner of 2 out of 3 rounds. We will each choose a topic and the third one will be decided by drawing lots. How about it? Sure. The competition that we propose is a chess battle. It's like selecting soldiers to fight on the battlefield. The world is the game, and the soldiers are the chess pieces. How about it? No problem. Jin Xian nodded. After pondering for a while, he said, the second round can be a combat test. How about we each pick a general to represent us and decide who is better? Because the other party was a woman, Jin Xian didn't want to bully the weak, but he also didn't want to make a move on a woman. Therefore, the compromise was to send representatives from each sect. However, Gong Sunshui unexpectedly made a suggestion. We have no problem with the martial arts test, but I think it would be better if the two of us were to fight. I have been practicing martial arts since I was a child, and I don't think I'm bad. However, the people around me have never really fought with me because of my identity. I heard that Lord Murong's martial arts is very strong, so I would like to exchange some pointers with you. I wonder if Lord Murong could fulfill my small request. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yao panicked. Imperial brother, can you stop this duel? Why do I feel like the Ice Beauty is digging a hole for herself? He didn't know the level of the Ice Beauty's martial arts, but he had experienced Jin Xian's martial arts before. Even he could only fight him to a draw. He was trained by Imperial sister-in-law and the fierce cavalry, plus Imperial brother's guidance. How bad could he be? In the fierce cavalry, except for Turin and the other cavalry masters, there were not many who had the confidence to beat him. In fact, it wasn't only Xiao Yao who was shocked. Even Qingyu Qiudong and the others behind Gong Sunshui were stunned. The sect master had never discussed the details of the duel with them. They didn't expect her to put herself in danger. However, they couldn't say anything because before they came here, the sect master had already ordered them to keep their mouths shut. No matter what happened, they couldn't disobey any of her decisions. Therefore, they could only keep their mouths shut and nervously speculate about the sect master's intentions. Xiao Su looked at him coldly. She is the sect master. A monarch's words are not to be taken lightly. In front of so many people, do you think she can go back on her words? Heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. Xiao Su felt that his second brother was like this. He looked at the person standing in the middle of the hall like a shining pearl and sighed softly in his heart. Who asked this idiot to take a fancy to the most beautiful jade in the world? Xiao Yao was stunned. Yes, she was the sect master. How could she go back on her words so easily? Unless Jin Xian didn't agree. His eyes lit up and he was about to speak, but Gong Sunshui, who was already on guard against him, immediately looked over. Her usually calm eyes flashed with a hint of pleading, asking him not to interfere. At this moment, Xiao Yao seemed to understand a lot of the meaning in her eyes and was stunned. It was also in this moment that Jin Xian gave his answer. I don't think it's appropriate. The difference in strength between men and women is too great. It's unfair to you. Hearing this, Xiao Yao sighed in relief. Jin Xian was a good kid. He decided not to tease him in the future. However, Gong Sunshui didn't appreciate it. Her tone was solemn. Is Sect Master Murong looking down on women? I don't mean that. Since that's the case, I'll agree to this suggestion. As a woman, I am also the sect master of the Tranquil Moon sect. On the battlefield, no one will show mercy to you just because you are a man or a woman. The path of power has always been so fair. Whoever is strong will rise to the top. It is that simple. Since Gong Sunshiwa had already said so, Jin Xin had no way out and could only agree. Since it's a best of 3, I might have won the first 2 rounds. There's no need for the 3rd round, so let's leave the last round for last. The time is set to 2 days later. Does Sect Master Murong have any objections? When Gong Sunshiwa finished speaking, Xining muttered softly, this sect master is so conceited. Who says she'll definitely win? Chu Qingyan heard Xining's muttering and couldn't help but frown as she looked at Gong Sunshiwa. Her actions today were completely different from the cold indifference she displayed before. It was as if she had grown edges, sharp and sharp. Could this be her true self? Or, it was also the first time Jin Xin met such a boastful girl. However, he never cared about such things. Master said before that the process wasn't important. What was important was the result. There was no need to argue. He agreed without hesitation. Alright, let's set it 2 days later. Gong Sunshiwa admired his straightforwardness and nodded. Then I won't disturb your time to reminisce. I'll take my leave first. She nodded to Chu Qingyan and the rest, then led them out of the hall. Qing Yu finally couldn't hold it in. Sect Master, does the High Priest know what you're doing? Gong Sunshiwa raised her hand to stop him from continuing. We'll talk when we get back. Just then, a clear and hurried voice sounded. Ice Beauty, stop right there. She sighed softly. She knew that he wouldn't let her off easily. Xiao Yao was stunned, as if a spring breeze had come and thousands of pear trees had bloomed. Xiao Yao's heart echoed. This was really good. At this moment, Gongsun Shui took a few steps back and put some distance between them. She smiled and said, I have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Xiao Yao was still immersed in her smile just now. He didn't react until she was far away. He couldn't help but be angry at himself for being so easily bewitched. But to be honest, the Ice Beauty's smile was really beautiful. He rubbed his chin. It wasn't good for him to chase after them, so he could only walk back. However, not long after, he finally understood the meaning of her words today, and his heart ached. Inside the hall. After Gongsun Shui left, the atmosphere was much more relaxed, but it was more or less affected by what happened just now. Mu Ling was straightforward and asked directly, why is Sect Master Gongsun in the residence? Huo Ling didn't hide anything. He told Jin Xin and the others about how he saved Gongsun Shui, as well as how she mobilized troops to save Feng Ling. All in all, this is fate and favor that can't be severed. Turan teased, I haven't seen you for a few days, but your phrasing has improved quite a bit. Huo Ling raised his little tail. Of course, it's never too late to learn. The atmosphere was livened up by these few words. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. The more the merrier. Now that they were back, there was a lot more fun. She glanced at Jin Xion's expression from the corner of her eye. She thought for a moment and said, still thinking about Miss Gongsun? Jin Xion nodded. From what Huo Ling said just now, this subordinate doesn't quite understand. Why did she personally come to Luocheng to help find Feng Ling? She could have just sent someone over. When she entered the city, Siyu had yet to lose his power. As a sect master, it wasn't a wise move for her to enter a dangerous place. Moreover, she gave this subordinate the wrong impression that she was here specifically to wait for this subordinate. Jin Xian had only met her once, and he already had so many doubts. Wasn't she the same? Gongsun Shui's appearance in Luocheng this time was very suspicious. In addition, she suddenly declared war this time. It was completely different from her usual style, and it made people feel uneasy. However, Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and said, this sect master Gongsun is a reasonable person. I believe that she has her own reasons for doing this. Moreover, weren't you thinking about how to deal with the Japanese people? Don't you have a ready-made solution now? You don't need to use force to solve this problem, and you can answer to the people. No matter if you win or lose, no one will dare to use the enmity between the two clans to pressure you, right? Jin Xian felt that his master's words made sense, and said obediently, "Master is right. No matter the result, this subordinate will benefit no matter what." It's good that you can think that way. Chu Qingyan laughed heartily. Everyone else also expressed that this was a problem between the Sun and Moon clans. As outsiders, it was not appropriate for them to interfere. Moreover, they were friends with Gongsun Shui, and she was Xiao Yao's sweetheart, so everyone tacitly chose to watch from the sidelines. Because Jin Xian was also one of them, and they were both flesh and blood. Let them fight among themselves. At most, they would come and clean up the mess in the end. Aside from the interlude just now, Jin Xian could talk about official matters, but other than that, he could not say a single word. Therefore, Xining took over the initiative. She had always been a chatterbox, and now that they had reunited, she was already full of things to say. Therefore, everyone listened attentively, and listened to her talk about the things that had happened in the past year. Interesting, thrilling, just like a storyteller. Although they had been exchanging letters these days, these people only reported the good news and not the bad news. When they encountered danger, they would only mention it casually. Now that they were listening to Xining's narration, they felt as if they were in the same situation. Although they had won one battle after another, only they knew how hard it had been. The world only saw you wearing fancy clothes and holding high authority, but they did not know how difficult it had been for you to overcome all obstacles. Chu Qingyan's heart ached for Jin Xian and the others. After Xining finished, she urged them to go and rest. After everyone went back to their rooms, Chu Qingyan walked in front of them with her head lowered. She was not aware that someone behind her hugged her tightly. Big Ice Cube was becoming more and more fond of sneaking up on her. Before she could say anything, she heard him say in a gloomy and displeased tone, "I've fought so many battles, but I don't see you feeling sorry for me." Oh, she's jealous now. Chapter 1685. Chu Qingyan was amused. When have I ever not doted on you? This person was really regressing as he lived. It was as if he had shifted all his focus to her after he had taken off the burden on his shoulders and no longer needed to care about those responsibilities. Whenever there was any trouble, he would inexplicably get jealous. In front of others, he was 1,000 miles away, but behind others, he was domineering and arrogant. To be able to win someone's heart was truly a lifetime's fortune. Xiao Su rested his chin on her shoulder and rubbed his cheek against her cheek. He snorted coldly. But you also dote on others. Jin Xian is not just anyone. In her heart, she had long regarded Jin Xian as her own younger brother. Xiao Su snorted again. He has Xining. What he meant was that he already had someone to dote on, so why should she dote on him? Chu Qingyan finally understood his point. She was both angry and amused. Okay. In the future, I'll only dote on you and the child. Xiao Su said domineeringly, "No, the child will have a wife in the future. It's enough that you dote on me. I only have you as my wife." Was this still the same cold-faced king who had despised her age, height, and intelligence when they first met? Time was a butcher's knife. What the hell had happened? Why aren't you saying anything? His deep and pleasant voice was filled with displeasure. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. I'm thinking about the first time we met. Xiao Su's first reaction was to think of the time on Maozuan Mountain. However, he knew that the first time they met was not the first time she was talking about. And then? How did His Royal Highness, who was feared by everyone, become the king of jealousy who only knows how to be jealous? Her tone was filled with emotion, but it was difficult to hide the teasing tone. As soon as she finished speaking, her legs hung in the air and she lost her balance. She was so shocked that she immediately reached out to hug his neck. Xiao Su leaned close to her ear and laughed so hard that it made her scalp tingle. Oh. So you're despising me now? Oh my God, I was just joking just now. How did the big ice cube change his face so quickly? The tenderness and sweetness disappeared, and it was as if he had turned back into that cold King Yama. She touched her heart and tried to make up for it. No, no, definitely not. You're still as handsome, and invincible as before. Xiao Su sneered disdainfully. He didn't buy it at all. He raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "Didn't you miss the old me? Then I'll let you savor it again today." Ah. Reminiscing. What the hell was this? While she was in a daze, he carried her and strode towards the bed. Hey, Big Ice Cube, what are you going to do? Chu Qingyan finally panicked. Big Ice Cube wouldn't want to do those indescribable things, right? Xiao Su smiled faintly. That's right. It's exactly what you're thinking now. Chu Qingyan's face immediately turned red. You're shameless. It's okay. I'm shameless. I just want you. Chu Qingyan heard his evil and domineering words and her face turned even redder. Big Ice Cube had such boyfriend power. He placed her on the bed and took off his mask. Before she could sneak off the bed, he pressed down on her two restless hands with one hand and restrained her waist with the other, preventing her from moving. Chu Qingyan could feel the masculine aura closing in on her and couldn't help but swallow her saliva. The Big Ice Cube had become so dangerous and scary. She couldn't get used to it and couldn't help but negotiate. Big Ice Cube, let's talk nicely. Be careful of the baby in your stomach. Xiao Su stifled a laugh in his heart. She was best at judging the situation. She wouldn't be soft-hearted if she could fight, and she wouldn't be afraid of losing face if she could run. At this time, he continued to tease her. You've already passed the critical period. Appropriate exercise will help you train your body. Chu Qingyan felt that his gaze was unbridled on her body and couldn't help but shrink her body. However, her entire body was shrouded under his body. No matter where she hid, she would still be under his eyes. She started to reflect on herself. What exactly did she do to provoke him? Just at this moment, the hand on her waist suddenly moved, followed by the sound of cloth tearing. Her entire body turned cold and she couldn't help but look down. PFFF, her clothes were shattered by the Big Ice Cube. Shattered, her heart thumped. Just as she was about to struggle and push him away, he narrowed his eyes and revealed a dangerous smile. Are you satisfied with what you see? Cold Face Owl King, HM. The Big Ice Cube was still conflicted about this. No matter which one it was, she liked both of them, okay? She blushed and looked up, wanting to explain to him, but she met his teasing gaze. She seemed to have been hit on her acupoints as she stared at him blankly. It was only when he kissed her lips that she suddenly understood the meaning behind the Big Ice Cube's series of abnormal actions. So the Big Ice Cube was doing it on purpose. Was this the romance between husband and wife? So embarrassing. But what should she do if she liked it so much? Her soft arms wrapped around his neck. The smile in Xian Mo's eyes deepened. His actions were domineering but not lacking in gentleness. After the entanglement, he lifted her body and laid on top of her without hesitation. After the entanglement, Xiao Su looked at the person sleeping peacefully in his arms. Her face was flushed and she was like a seductive peach. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her. Ever since he didn't have to live for his mission, she was the only one in his life. Just as he said before, after taking off the emperor's robe, he would only live for her. So, from now on, she was his sky and his earth. He was willing to be crazy with her and play with her. He was willing to do everything for her. The ice cube faced outwards, leaving his gentleness only for her. Seeing her unconsciously wrap her arms around his waist and find a comfortable position in his arms to fall asleep, he chuckled softly. He reached out and hugged her, closing his eyes. With her around, life was peaceful. The other courtyard in the mansion was a bit unpeaceful. Just as Gongsun Shui stepped into the room, Lan Si, who had received the news from the front yard, also arrived. Sect Master, why didn't you discuss it before going into battle yourself? When Lan Si heard that she was going to compete with Murong Yunxian, his heart was in his throat and he rushed over without stopping. Gongsun Shui invited him to sit down and asked someone to serve tea. She said calmly, "High Priestess, don't you believe in my ability?" Lan Si immediately said, "This isn't a matter of whether I believe in you or not. Swords are silent, and the other party isn't easy to deal with. Why don't you let Qing Yu take your place? High Priestess, you said that you would listen to my arrangements. Why are you objecting at the beginning?" Gongsun Shui looked disappointed. Lan Si remembered what he had promised and smiled embarrassedly. His attitude softened, but he was still a bit conflicted. "But, High Priestess, don't worry. I won't let myself get hurt." Since she had already said this, Lan Si couldn't use the words he had prepared. In the end, he could only sigh and compromise. After all, the sect master had been making her own decisions since she was young. Seeing that the high priestess was no longer conflicted, she changed the topic with a faint smile in her eyes. "High Priestess, what kind of person do you think Murong Yunxian is?" Lan Si was stunned. What did the sect master mean? Did she fall for Murong Yunxian? Love at first sight. Chapter 1686. Lan Si's expression didn't escape Gong Sunshue's eyes. She couldn't help but facepalm. Ever since Xiao Yao appeared, the high priest had been acting strangely. What the hell was he thinking? "High priest, from the perspective of the country, please comment on Murong Yunxian." She repeated the question again. Lan Si also knew that he was overthinking. How could the sect master be the kind of person who would be seduced by beauty? So he immediately stopped thinking about it and took the question seriously. Murong Yunxuan's performance on the battlefield during this period of time shows that he is a brave and resourceful person. Not only is he able to command soldiers, he is also able to go to the battlefield to fight the enemy. This is truly rare. However, if he only has the ability to mobilize soldiers, he can only be regarded as an outstanding general. However, this person also knows how to use people well. The Ri clan has been in decline for so many years, and the people's hearts are no longer united. Although they can be united in the general direction, they all have their own ulterior motives in private. However, he can quickly buy people's hearts and use them to the best of their ability. He can also make them submit to him. I think that even the previous sect masters of the Ri clan couldn't do it. He is skilled in both the pen and the sword, and can fight well. This is a very outstanding leader. However, it is often difficult for people like him to take care of the people after the war. He is slightly inferior in political affairs. After all, no one is so perfect. However, Lan Si continued, but after the disaster, the reconstruction, the resettlement of the people, and a series of policies, it is enough to show that he is a qualified ruler. Although he didn't want to boost the morale of others and diminish his own prestige, he still gave a fair evaluation. This Murong Yunxian is the most outstanding person I have seen in my many years of life. Hearing this evaluation, Gong Sunshue's eyes raised a little bit of a smile. What the high priest said coincides with what I think. Realizing that he had praised the enemy sect master in front of the sect master, Lan Si felt a little apologetic and hurriedly said, "Sect master, this old one didn't mean anything else. You are also the most outstanding person this old one has ever seen in governing a country." Gong Sunshue waved her hand indifferently. "Don't be afraid, high priest. You're just telling the truth. I'm not a petty person who can't tolerate others being better than me." Lan Si was very pleased with her calm demeanor. He straightened his back and said, "Sovereign, you have a kind heart, broad vision, resourceful, and know how to make good use of people. As the ruler of a country, this is enough. As long as the civil and military officials are used properly, the generals can charge and break through the enemy lines to protect the country, and the civil officials can build irrigation works to benefit the people. Why do you need to do everything personally? That's why it's a blessing for the world to unify the sun-moon race and take over your position." Gong Sunshue shook her head in her heart. The high priest had always placed his hopes on her and always forgot about her hidden illness. But at this time, she didn't want to remind him and make him sad. You're right, High Priest, she replied calmly. The High Priest seemed to be encouraged. He thought of the competition 2 days later and said confidently, Sovereign, you must have a well-thought-out plan to use the chess competition. The chess competition doesn't just test the chess player's ability to plan, it also tests the player's temperament. Only if you can calm down in a chaotic situation, have the courage to cut off all means of retreat in a desperate situation, and be neither arrogant nor rash, can you walk to the end. If you win the chess competition, I'm afraid no one can say that you don't have the ability to unify the two races. The chess competition simulated a real battlefield. If you couldn't win in a chess competition, it would be difficult to win in a real battle. That's why you use this competition to stop people from gossiping. At the same time, it also showed the sovereign's ability to devise strategies. It was a brilliant plan. As for the martial arts competition, your martial arts were personally taught by a few retired masters of the moon race. I dare not say that you're invincible, but at least no one can beat you now. Of course, even without the Shao clan, I believe you're invincible. This way, Murong Yunxian won't be able to defeat you alone, and no one will dare to have any objections. Lan Si clapped her hands as if victory was in sight. She couldn't help but laugh. Sovereign, this is a brilliant plan. You used a competition to convince the world of your ability without harming innocent people. It's wonderful. Gong Suanxue looked at the overjoyed high priest and smiled very lightly. That's right, the purpose of these competitions was to convince the world, but she didn't do it for herself. But she wouldn't tell the high priest about this, or the first person to stop her would be this person in front of her. Chiu Feng served tea. Lan Si was thirsty after talking so much, so she took a few sips. At this time, Gong Suanxue thought of something and said to Lan Si, Today, after I met Murong Yunxian, I found something very puzzling. Lan Si immediately asked, What's the matter? Gong Suanxue stood up and paced around the room, her eyes lost in thought. I found that Murong Yunxuan's attitude towards the Shao family is very different. It's not as simple as friends. He is very respectful towards young Master Shao and Madame Shao, especially towards Madame Shao. When I sent the challenge letter, Murong Yunxian actually subconsciously asked for her opinion. This makes me very puzzled. What role does the Shao family play in Murong Yunxuan's life? Lan Si was also shocked. Sovereign, are you saying that you are worried that the Shao family will use the emperor to command the nobles? That Murong Yunxian is just a puppet. Gong Suanxue shook her head in amusement at the high priest's overreaction. The high priest didn't know much about the Shao family. At most, he only had contact with Xiao Yao, so it was normal for him to have this misunderstanding. However, she had spent some time with Chu Qingyan and the others. Although it wasn't long, it was enough to tell a person's character. In her eyes, Chu Qingyan and the others were not people who only cared about profits and power. Hearing the sect master's denial, Lan Si stroked his beard in confusion. Then what does the sect master mean? Gong Suanxue said with her hands behind her back, Did the high priest not notice that the guards following the Shao family and Murong Yunxuan's guards are of the same origin? If Chu Qingyan was here, she would definitely be amazed by her amazing insight. Lan Si carefully recalled the information he received and nodded in surprise. Murong Yunxian has lived outside for more than 10 years. He should have a great relationship with the Shao family. High Priest, let Wei Yu secretly investigate the relationship between Murong Yunxian and the Shao family. After all, knowing the enemy and yourself is the key to victory. Lan Si felt that her words made sense and immediately put down his teacup. He was about to stand up when he was stopped. Does the sect master have any other orders? Gong Suanxue muttered, The Shao family is like an impenetrable fortress. It is very difficult to find out and will even alert the enemy. Let Wei Yu start with the people from the Yang Yen sect. Those people are not tight-lipped and it is easy to pry out information. However, you still have to be careful. They are all foxes who have lived for decades. Lan Si nodded before leaving. Gong Suanxue looked at the high priest's back as he left in a hurry and felt a little guilty. She didn't really want to know the enemy and herself to victory. She just wanted to know what kind of life he had been living during his years of wandering outside. Chapter 1687. The people from the Sun Blaze clan were just outside the city. Elder Zhuo's follower, Protector Chui, liked to drink, but he had a bad habit of talking nonsense after getting drunk. Thus, Wei Yu used some tricks to get information from him. Because of the urgency of this mission, Wei Yu only found out about it at night and knocked on Gong Xuanxue's door. Qiu Feng came in to report, and Gong Xuanxue let her in without thinking. Wei Yu told her all the information she had obtained. When she learned that Murong Yunxian had lost his master's protection after leaving North Korea, he had lost his home and was being persecuted, her eyes flashed with pain. Then, she heard that he was saved by Chu Qingyan and had been with her for the past 10 years. She felt relieved. Although it had been hard at the beginning, he had met a benefactor in the end. It was much better than living in fear for so many years, so she was relieved. This also made her understand many things. Why did the Shao family have a noble aura? Why did they have so many elites around them? Why did Xiao Yao solve the problem so easily? Why did Murong Yunxian respect Chu Qingyan so much? Everything had been answered. They were members of the royal family of a large country, so everything made sense. As it turned out, that idiot was a prince. No wonder. Wei Yu thought that the sect master was shocked by the news. When he first heard about it, it took him a long time to digest it. As expected, his premonition was right. Those people were not simple. He did not expect them to be so complicated. He thought about the current situation. If the Shao clan sent reinforcements to the Sun clan, then the Moon clan would definitely lose. Wei Yu's heart jumped and he hurriedly expressed his worries. Gong Xuanxue came back to her senses and shook her head. If the Shao family wanted reinforcements, they would have sent reinforcements during the most difficult time. They wouldn't wait until the Yu family's position is stable, so you don't have to worry. Wei Yu thought about it and agreed. Seeing the sect master so calm, it seemed like he was making a fuss. He couldn't help but feel ashamed. How's the matter I gave you coming along? Seeing the sect master mention something else, Wei Yu cupped his hands and said, I've found their whereabouts. I'm making arrangements and will be able to capture them soon. You did very well, Gong Xuanxue affirmed. Wei Yu's lips curled into a smile. Sect master, what are you saying? This is what this humble servant should do. Gong Xuanxue raised her eyes and looked at the person who had been by her side since she was a child. The Wei family was the support that her father had left for her. This person was the only head of the Wei family. However, after her father passed away, the Wei family was also persecuted by the Su family. When she was controlled by the Su family, the Wei family thought of ways to send him to her. When they first met, he was still young. His childish face showed unswerving determination. She still remembered the first words he said. I, Wei Yu, swear on my life that I will do everything in my power to clear all obstacles and protect Gong Xuanxue. These words made her look at the only heir of the Wei family in a new light. At the same time, she firmly believed that she would be able to get out of this predicament and fight against the Su family together with him. After so many years, she had suffered so much. He had also suffered so much in secret. Now that she had lived up to everyone's expectations and sat on the position of sect master of the Yue sect, he had also relied on his own strength to establish an underground intelligence group. He quickly rose in the imperial court and became her eyes and right-hand man in the Moon clan. Big brother Wei, it's been hard on you these years. Recalling the bits and pieces of the past, so many years had passed unknowingly. Gong Xuanxue forgot her identity at this moment and thanked him gratefully. This big brother Wei pulled Wei Yu's memories back to the first time they met more than 10 years ago. The little girl who was not even as tall as his shoulder but shouldered a blood feud. At that time, she would cry, laugh, and be afraid. She did not have the coldness and calmness after experiencing so much. At that time, he thought that he must do his best to protect her. Unexpectedly, more than 10 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Wei Yu waved his hand. It's not hard. It's what I should do. Gong Sun Shui shook her head. In this world, there is no such thing as should, or should not. The Wei family has been loyal to my father. Now you have done so many things for me. I don't know how to thank you. Wei Yu smiled. You and your father are both wise masters. The Moon clan can only be stable and peaceful in your hands. You are worthy of our Wei family's loyalty. As long as the people live and work in peace, the Wei family will be satisfied. Gong Sun Shui's eyes moved. Yes. In the future, the people will live and work in peace. The world will be stable and peaceful. You will not be disappointed. That day will come soon. Wei Yu's face bloomed when he heard this. I knew that you would bring us happiness and good health. Gong Sun Shui smiled slightly. Seeing that it was late, Wei Yu did not want to disturb her. He said a few more words and left. Gong Sun Shui looked at the dark night outside the window. Her eyes were firm. Big brother Wei, I will not let you down. Because of the Ice Beauty's abnormal behavior these few days, Xiao Yao was annoyed. He wanted to look for her, but he was stopped by Qiu Feng, saying that her sect master was busy with political affairs, so he didn't see her for the entire day. Now, she was lying on the roof drinking alone. He looked at the Ice Beauty's courtyard through the courtyard wall. He sighed and drank quietly. Soon, there were several wine jugs by his feet. He did not expect that he, the carefree king, would one day drown his sorrows in alcohol. If this news spread to the Sichuan capital, those people would laugh their heads off. Just as he was sighing to himself, his sharp eyes saw a man's figure enter the Ice Beauty's courtyard. Very quickly, he was brought into the room by Qiu Feng. Thinking of how he had been refused entry for an entire day, that man actually managed to see the Ice Beauty so easily. Xiao Yao's eyes widened. A man and a woman alone in a room in the middle of the night. Just thinking about it made his heart itch. He held the wine jug tightly. Soon, the sparkling wine flowed along the cracks of the jug. Under the moonlight, it shone brightly, illuminating Xiao Yao's angry, sad, and indignant eyes. The time it took to brew a cup of tea passed. Half an incense's time passed. What were they doing in the room? Only when his entire body was chilled by the cold did the door open again. He could not see the other person's face clearly. He was furious. He flipped over and walked to the entrance of the Ice Beauty's courtyard. However, that person's movements were fast. He could only see his back from afar. It was somewhat familiar. He grabbed the Yu clan guard's collar and asked with narrowed eyes, who was that person who just left? The person in front of him had a close relationship with his sect master. The guard did not think much and replied, it was Lord Wei. Wei Yu? The guard saw Xiao Yao's cold aura and wondered if he was jealous. He remembered that the high priest had said that this second young master Xiao was likely to enter the sect master's harem. He hurriedly said, Lord Wei grew up with our sect master. The sect master trusts Lord Wei very much. He must have come tonight for an urgent matter. Please don't think too much. Xiao Yao only listened to the first half of the sentence. He automatically blocked out the rest. He remembered that she said that she had no other relationship with him. She lied to him. He snorted coldly and let go of the guard's collar. In a flash, he disappeared. The guard thought that he had seen a ghost. Gong Suanxue had just taken off her coat when she heard the window open. She immediately turned around vigilantly, wanting to grab the coat on the shelf. However, it was too late. A dangerous male aura approached her from behind, enveloping her entire body. Chapter 1688. It had only been a blink of an eye from when she heard the noise to when the other person approached. It was obvious how powerful the other person's martial arts were. Gong Sun Shui didn't dare to act rashly because the other person didn't do anything other than approach her from behind. Her voice was cold, may I ask who you are? Why did you barge into my room in the middle of the night? However, this sentence was like a stone thrown into the sea. The person behind her didn't make a sound. The atmosphere suddenly became strange. Gongsun Shui didn't know what this person wanted to do. Her clothes were thin and couldn't stand the cold. In this situation, she was at a disadvantage. She didn't know the intentions of the person behind her, but she couldn't waste time with him. So she reached out to take her coat. As long as her body was warm, she would be able to deal with any accidents. But before her hand could touch the clothes, someone grabbed her wrist forcefully, and the scorching sensation made her body stiffen. She didn't want to sit and wait for death. Her left hand could still move freely. She turned around to strike behind her. However, even though she was fast, the other party was faster. He raised his other hand and grabbed her wrist, as if he had anticipated all of her attacks. His body leaned to one side, dodging her kick, and he turned her around and held her in his arms. From behind, it looked like she was being held by her lover. After Wei Yu left, she had extinguished the candles in the room. She didn't expect the other person to take advantage of her. She was in the open and the enemy was in the dark. She was at a disadvantage. Being held in the other person's arms in such an awkward position, it was inevitable that there would be friction. Her clothes were thin and she quickly felt the warmth from the other person's chest. Her cheeks flushed, but it was from anger. Who are you? What do you want? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you've taken me hostage. I'm not afraid of death. She lowered her voice and said coldly. From the fight just now, there was no doubt that the person who attacked her was a man, and a man whose martial arts were much better than hers. She couldn't use force. She could only use her wits. A light snort came to her ear. Gongsun Shui's eyes were cold. Her righteous words were only met with a disdainful snort. Her heart sank. She had been in power for so many years and had cleaned up the court. Needless to say, she had offended many people. To her, assassinations were nothing out of the ordinary. She was not afraid of death, but she still had many things to do. She could not die yet. When the other party came in, he had many opportunities to take her life, but he did not do so. Perhaps his goal was not her life. Perhaps, they could negotiate. Hero, I don't know what you want, but if you want money, then name a number and I'll satisfy you. If you want power, then you should have known who I was before you came here. I'll satisfy you as well. She spoke word by word, using her whole body to feel the changes in his emotions, to see if she could grasp what he was thinking. Unfortunately, the other party did not seem to be interested in her suggestion. She began to reflect. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly? At this moment, the hand holding her wrist suddenly moved. His fingertips caressed her skin, and his arms slowly tightened, destroying her thoughts of trying to get away from his chest. This invasive action made her mind go blank, and she had a guess that she didn't want to think about. Could it be that this person, before she could continue her train of thought, a mocking voice rang in her ears. Money, power, influence, I have them all. I don't care for them. If you want them, I can give them to you as long as you promise me one thing. What an arrogant tone. Wait, this voice, Gongsun Shui's eyes widened. You are Xiao Yao. At this time, Xiao Yao did not care if he was recognized or not. From the moment he saw Wei Yu until now, he had been suppressing his anger, and now it was getting bigger and bigger. He felt that his whole body was about to explode. He let go of her hand and threw her on the bed. Because the winter brocade quilt was thick, he did not have to worry about her getting hurt. She did not get a response from the other party. Instead, she was pushed onto the bed. That's right. While Gongsun Shui was still wondering why this person suddenly appeared in her room, she was thrown on the bed. She struggled to get up, but his body was already on top of hers. When he spoke earlier, she recognized his voice. At this moment, with the faint light from the lanterns outside the window, she could once again clearly see the appearance of the person in front of her. He was so close that she could count his eyelashes and see the fire in his eyes that could not be ignored. At such a close distance, she could smell the alcohol on his body. She could not help but be surprised. You drank? This guy couldn't be drunk and acting crazy, right? However, the person in front of her just snorted and did not answer. Instead, his eyes became brighter. She avoided the bright eyes that she could not look directly at and whispered, "Why did you come to my room in the middle of the night? Get off me." Xiao Yao imprisoned her under his body and did not let her struggle. His voice was deep and hoarse. "Why can other people come to you in the middle of the night, but I can't?" "What other people?" Gongsun Shui did not understand his words. The black shadow in front of her covered her lips without any explanation. Her whole mind went blank. She looked cold, but her lips were soft and warm. He looked like the sun, but his lips were cold. Fire and ice touched, creating the most beautiful intertwining. He kissed her quickly and without any rhythm. He wanted to swallow this deceiving tongue into his stomach, so that she would no longer deceive him. He was eager to leave his mark on this person, so that no one would think about it anymore. Gongsun Shui did not expect him to do this. At this time, she was a little dizzy from the alcohol on his body. Her hands were locked and her feet were pinned down by him, so she could not move at all. She could only be forced to endure his inexplicable anger and desperate venting. He only left her lips when he felt that she was almost out of breath. Gongsun Shui panted, her eyes a little blurred. After a while, she came back to her senses. She pursed her red lips and looked at the person in front of her who was different from usual. "What's wrong with you today?" She was shocked by her own hoarse voice, but more than that, she was surprised that the first thing she thought of at this time was to care about him instead of being angry at what he had just done. Xiao Yao raised his other hand and stroked the corner of her lips. His action was so ambiguous that her snow-white skin could not help but blush. He saw that she was still looking at him with an innocent look. He was angry and approached her. When he was only a paper away from her, he narrowed his eyes and said angrily, "You still ask me what's wrong with me? You have another man behind my back." Gongsun Shui was stunned. What nonsense was he talking about? She opened her mouth and wanted to scold him for talking nonsense, but he did not give her a chance to speak at all. "I don't want to listen to you now." He came down on her again and blocked her words with his tongue.